Jeanette?
Hiya.
Can you hear me?
Yep, can hear you fine.
Just 2 minutes, Jeanette. We're live.
Okay. So do you want me to go off and you can phone me, or?
Yeah, it'll be 2 minutes, honestly, 2 minutes.
Right, okay.
Right, just go, Paul. Paul.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't know what happened there, Jeanette. Just, yeah.
I'm here, yeah.
Right, Paul, just go.
Right, Jeanette. Firstly, Jeanette, thanks very much for coming on. I just want to talk to you about your movement on Gort Memorial, Jeanette, and how you came about that.
All right. So around, I think it was 2015, there was some discussions about Glasgow City Council doing something which didn't seem to be going anywhere, and it occurred to me that actually really the community should just do it. So we pulled together a committee, just anybody who was around really that was interested in it, and began to first of all just establish that yes, this was something we wanted to do, and then we began to set up the infrastructure, get an email account and a Twitter account, and start setting up fundraising and getting a bank account and all of those things which take time, and we started all of that, and then we began to talk about how you would get a design and so on. So the plan was always to have a design competition. So set up a tender that artists, sculptors could bid for. And we got some help from Paul Cosgrove at the Glasgow School of Art, which was really appreciated. But what he made clear to us is that you couldn't really do that until you'd had a site. Now, at that point, there was various possibilities that we were considering, but really I think the majority of people wanted it to be like other cities. They wanted it to be on by the water, so where people would have come in. Now, where people actually came in Glasgow was much further down the Broomlow, than there's nothing much there, so we probably wouldn't have put it there, but we would have thought about, just at Clyde Street and round about there. Right for the outset, Canon Tom White, the parish priest at St Mary's, had said, well, we would be happy for you to have it here. But we continued to progress to try and see if we could get it where the majority of people wanted it, which was by the water. Or some other, there was two things really, wasn't it? I mean, you want somewhere that's a prominent site, an appropriate site, something that has footfall, well, maybe three things, and something that has some historical relevance. Now, St Mary's definitely has historical relevance, obviously, but maybe not so much in terms of footfall and prominence. So anyway, that all went on, and without trailing over old ground, Glasgow City Council were extremely unhelpful in all of this. We began these discussions when Labour controlled Glasgow, and then they continued while the SNP controlled Glasgow. But let me be clear, none of them really covered themselves in glory in this, because they didn't really, they were really unhelpful. And then they said they were going to do their thing, and they did this really quite credible thing where they did something which nobody else in the world has done. And I don't think anybody else has ever done in relation to any disaster of the size of Angultamore. You know, where you wiped out a quarter of a population, which has never recovered. Ireland's whole population has never recovered. And you link that to an event that happened at the same time, in which I don't think there was a single recorded death. And that's not to say that what happened in the Highlands with people getting displaced and, you know, landowner owners paying them to, you know, basically emigrate and so on. That's not to say that that wasn't you know, a terrible time for those people, but in no way does it in any way come near the horror of what happened in Ireland. And Glasgow City Council, for reasons which I think you and I could be quite clear about, they decided that they couldn't have a memorial to Angultamore that wasn't, that on its own had to be linked to something else. And we just took the decision, you know, that was something we wouldn't have anything to do with. We didn't have anything to do with it. There was nothing to do with it. We weren't involved in the committee that put it together and so on. But anyway, so they went ahead with their thing, which has been effectively a disaster. It was like a non-event. And I don't know if you've ever seen the thing, but it's absolutely awful looking.
It's not very nice.
It wasn't very good when it was unveiled, and it looks even worse now, because it has, look, that thing has no basis in the community. Either community. To be quite honest, I thought it was a bigger insult to the people of the Highlands than it was to us, because the people of the Highlands would be just being used as a cover so that Glasgow City Council could have a memorial to both, tick a box and no annoy bigots. So they stuck them on it. But I mean, what has a rowing boat got to do with what happened in the Highlands? I mean, really, what has that got to do with anything? So it was awful. It was an insult to them. It was an insult to us, but I think it was a bigger insult to them. And those people have an absolute right to commemorate things that happened to their people. And us doing what we were doing was certainly didn't cut across that at all. But anyway, so leaving that negativity aside, after about 2 years of this, we said, well, no, we have to get on with this, because if we don't get a site and get this thing started, this project is going to die. So we just started. We basically started the design competition. We accepted the very kind offer of the parish priest and parishioners of St Mary's, and we began to do the design competition. That was quite successful. We got a lot of entries when the committee just kind of whittled them down successively, and then we came down to 3. We had a community consultation event. That was a nice big event, and the Bawz Art Design, and we listened to what people had to say, and then we went through all of the build plans and the costings and all of those kinds of things, and we chose the one that we chose, John McCann's statue, and then we completed the fundraising, and I have to say the fundraising wasn't the hardest task we've ever had. I mean, that money came in very, you know, generously and quickly, and you know, there was a couple of events covered most of it. So it was great, and people were fundraising all over the place. There were, you know, different, you know, supporters buses, and you know, other organisations were just organising their own wee thing and then sending in the money. So it was fantastic. And then, of course, the thing was the statue was built, and we planned to unveil it in March 2020. And March of May of 2020. And then the world went to hell in a handcart. So it then sat in a lockup Donegal, and we just waited it out, because while we could have just put it in, we couldn't have had any kind of an event, and we didn't want to do that. Having waited all that time, we wanted to wait. And then as things moved on, there was various points where we thought, yeah, we can do this. We can maybe do it in November with a smaller crowd, and we'll live stream it. And then that wasn't possible. And it just basically went on like that. And then eventually we said, no, we think we can do this now. And we chose a date. The date had no particular relevance. It was just, the first appropriate date where nothing else was happening that would allow us to do it. And we ended up with an absolutely beautiful day, sunshine. I don't know if you were there, and the statue was unveiled. So that's the story of the statue. And since then, there's been streams of people who have been down to get their photos taken, having a look at it more closely. And the plan now is to, I don't know if you may have seen, but there was some memorial booklets produced, and they're selling at £5 a copy, and the money from that will be used to enhance the site. So put some lights around the statue, put a bench in where people could sit and reflect on it, and make a disabled access bit so people can come in and go round the statue and see it properly. So that
Send me a link. If you'll send a link in the description.
A link to
what you're selling there, the memorial thing.
No, we're not selling them online. They're available. No, they're available from St Mary's around Mass times. So if people go down to St Mary's around the times that Mass is on, they'll be able to get a copy there. There have been a few people who are not in Glasgow and are not likely to be in Glasgow anytime soon, and we facilitated them by posting them. But I don't think we want to take that on as a, we don't want to do an online sale of that, because that is an awful lot of work for people. So really, we've helped a few people if they're unable to get to it. But most people, what we would ask is, if you know anybody in Glasgow, if you can't get here yourself, you know somebody in Glasgow, can you get them to get it? And that would be really helpful.
Perfect, Jeanette. Mark, do you have anything to add there, or you have to move on?
Sounding too well into it.
I don't know what it is.
I'm happy that you move on. I'll try and sort this, Paul.
Yeah, Jeanette, just moving on, give us a background to when you joined the Celtic Trust and why you joined the Celtic Trust.
Well, I was a founder of the Celtic Trust.
Yeah, wow.
So what happened was, I was in my work capacity. I'm an academic. I was in a meeting in London of various football supporters groups and academics around us who were looking at the whole notion of supporters trusts. And there were no supporters trusts in Scotland at the time. And having attended it and listened to what that was about, and really what supporters trusts are about, the government in England, the Department of Culture, Media and Sport, were funding these bodies to be set up. And it was in recognition of the fact that your relationship to the club that you support is not like any other commercial relationship. So it's not like what shop you shop in, or what private companies that you use for whatever you might use it. So it's about saying, these might be run as private companies, but in actual fact, the impact they have on the life of communities and individuals who are associated with them is huge. So they set up these things called supporters trusts, and at that time there was another academic that I, Sean Hamill, had written, and we wrote with subsequently to that, and we thought, well, why don't we have one for Celtic? He was a Celtic sportsman. So we basically again, it was a bit like the Angora Moore thing, which is phoned round people that we thought would be interested, and those were largely people were Celtic supporters, but they were trade unionists, people associated with mutuals, because that's what it is. Celtic Trust is a mutual organisation. It's registered as a industrial and provident society with a regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. So as a mutual, it's so mutual, people know what mutuals are. They know, like a credit union is a mutual, and those kinds of things. So we just basically called people together and we began to set that up. Now that also took 2 years. So a bit of a common history here that I'm involved in, but that took 2 years to put together the constitution, because obviously this is because our view was that the Celtic Trust was a financial and legal vehicle for ultimately the fans owning Celtic, and it still is. It still can be that. So it had to be really watertight in terms of the constitution and how it was set up. Anyway, so that was done. Now, obviously, unlike a lot of trusts that are associated with quite small clubs or clubs who had crises and things like that, Celtic Trust wasn't like that. And, so we had, Celtic was extremely successful really up to last season for essentially the whole of the lifetime of the trust. So it was incorporated in 2000, so it's like 21 years old. So it's basically in the whole of that time, Celtic's been doing pretty well. And, long may it continue. We're not looking for disasters or crises. However, we have always had the view that there was a risk of the way that Celtic is organised, and that it's a PLC. And so while we can make an argument about those people who are big shareholders in Celtic, we can make an argument about to what extent they're committed to Celtic, to what extent, they're Celtic supporters in the sense that they put the club first before any, financial interest. We can make an argument about that. But what is absolutely the case is that at any point, if those people decided to sell, then we would be vulnerable to a takeover by essentially malevolent forces, like people who have no love for Celtic. So that's always been a risk, and it always will be a risk as long as we're organised on a PLC model, which is not something that we want. So while Celtic kind of ran along, we kind of course, we were never going to get to anywhere near, a big shareholder in Celtic anytime soon. So while that went along, we did things that you probably know about. So we did a lot of campaigning. We made use of the fact that we were shareholders ourselves, because the Celtic Trust owns shares. And if you're a member of the trust, then you own those shares in common. We used that and we were the first organisation that ever put, and still really the only organisation, there's only been one other group of people who have ever put a resolution to the Celtic PLC AGM, and we helped them when that happened. So what we were able to do was essentially punch well above our weight in terms of our membership by being able to organise getting resolutions on the Celtic PLC AGM agenda and to argue for those. Now, mostly we did win those on the floor, although actually lots of things that we proposed were introduced subsequently, and that's fine. That's where we are. So that's what the Celtic Trust was and is. The difference is that following the disastrous season last year, we got a big boost in membership. That allowed us to start setting up subcommittees, so we got more people actively involved in doing different kinds of work. And our big campaign is essentially the same, which is to build up a shareholding in Celtic, but also to unite the sort of, about 120,000 or something. 28,000 shareholders. Most of whom, bar a handful, are just basically supporter shareholders who own a small number of shares, and to try and unite that vote. And they own between them about 20% of the club. So, I mean, if we could unite those people in a sense, not necessarily, well, what we would like is for them to join the trust. But even if they don't want to join the trust, to agree to look at resolutions each year for each PLC AGM and to consider, either proxying their vote to us and allowing us to cast it, or casting it themselves for trust resolutions, things that we've put forward, which we think are in the broader interests of fans and which are decided democratically within the trust membership. So that's what we're really, because if we could get to that point, look, if we could get to 5%, we would be able to call emergency general meetings of the PLC board. So if you imagine that we'd owned 5% in, September or October of last year, we could have forced the club to hold an EGM, and we could have, instead of standing in, the car park in November, or indeed standing in the car park last week in the bucket and rain, we could have forced them to hold a meeting and to hold them to account and to say, what are you doing? You know, everybody and their dog can see that there's a problem here. What are you doing to fix it? Instead of which, they just battened down the hatches, hid in behind their boardroom doors and never spoke to us. And, you know, we've moved on a little bit since then, but, you know, we're always in danger of going back there again.
I think that's the main issue, isn't it? We're in danger of going back there again, Jeanette, isn't it?
Say again?
I think that's the main issue, that we're in danger of going back there again, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, you could. I mean, there's nothing to stop that happening. Until we're in a position where we can exert some power, then the only thing we've got, as I said in the car park last week, is we have our voice and we have our physical presence, and we have to use that to the best effect that we can. But the most useful thing that the Celtic support can be doing right now as individuals is to try and work out, do you own shares? Are you in contact with those shares, as in, are they registered at the correct address that you now live at? Do you receive AGM mailings? Can you register on our new shareholder portal where you can agree to be contacted by us for each PLC AGM? Or do you know somebody who owns shares? Or can you encourage them to do it? That's the most useful thing that you can be doing. And I know it's when things go wrong, people want something done right away. They just want, get it done. But the reality is, without building up the basis of that power, then all we have is the ability to shout and state our case and physically turn up and say this is what we think, but they can just shut the curtains of the boardroom and just
are they listening to Jeanette, the board, or are they afraid of you, the board members?
It'd be very different. I mean, that's not really a question for me. They do, we have in the past had, a respectful relationship in the sense that we meet, we discuss things, we don't always agree, but we, and we have moved forward. We've achieved quite a lot as a trust in terms of, nothing that would be credited to us by the board because, at the AGMs, they always vote everything we say down pretty much.
Exactly.
But thereafter, they have introduced things, and that's great. So we've had a reasonably, but that respectful relationship. But that relationship took a severe done really at the back end of last year when we put forward what was I think a really, really well thought out, sensible proposal about saying you promised to basically compensate fans for the fact that they bought season tickets. Practically the only club in Europe that did this, sold season tickets at the full price, and people never got to see a single game, and then wanted to do the same thing again this season. Although obviously this season has now changed, but at the time when we bought
didn't
those,
know what was going to be
there was
happening.
no guarantee it was going to happen. So basically asking people to do the same again. And they're about the only club in Europe, big of any size, that did this. And they really owed it to the fans to do something. And what we proposed was that they have a share issue, that they issue shares to some value, to whatever they thought was the appropriate thing. And what that would have done was it would, first of all, would have cost them nothing. It would have, people went on, oh, you're diluting shares. I'm amazed at how many Celtic supporters are concerned about small dilution in the wealth of very wealthy people. That just always surprises me that they get so upset about that. But anyway, so, there would be a dilution, a small dilution. But, you would spread share ownership. It would be, it would be a wider base. More people would come into contact with shares and be able to take part in meetings. Of course, maybe that was what they didn't want, but anyway, so they knocked that back in favour of a £50 Superstore voucher, which I just thought was, and not only did they do that, which I thought was pretty despicable, really, but the way they did it I mean, they never spoke to us, and then we'd to press and press and press to get an answer from them. And then when they gave us an answer, the answer, it was basically dishonest.
Mm-hmm.
It was saying, "Oh, you were proposing this enormous amount of money." Well, there had been lots of discussion of what that would be, but at any point they could have said to us, "Look, can we have a chat about this? And, this is what we think about the amount." And, we would have had that conversation in good faith. But they didn't do that. Then they sort of said, "Oh, well, we had asked for too much," which was just ridiculous because the formal proposal we put had no amount specified in it. And they just treated us as fans, also as shareholders, really, really disrespectfully. And I think at that point we thought, what is the point of talking to people who speak to you like that? Now, it's not that we will never speak to them again, but I think we just reached a point where we thought, actually, you need to understand how completely out of order and unacceptable that approach was. And then, you look and you think, well, have things changed? I don't think they have. We were outside there last Sunday. We were saying what we had to say. And, this whole business about, absolutely giving us nothing. And I thought the Green Brigade banner put it very well. Rinse and repeat, just squeeze every, show no respect, show none, just, and then charging us. I mean, the Hearts game was particularly bad, I thought, because as people have pointed out, that could have been drawn away from home. So they weren't relying on that money. They didn't know that money was necessarily coming.
Exactly.
They could have just said, "No, look, in lieu of in a small token, we'll do this." In terms of those vouchers, what we did, because frankly, I had no interest in them. My children are up now, so I didn't really want them anyway. There's nothing that I wouldn't have insulted myself by using them. But that's not to say that people who wanted to use them were out of order. They were absolutely entitled to use them because they were theirs. I mean, they were a very small compensation for what they'd already shelled out. So I was absolutely happy for people to use them. But what we said is if other people felt the way I felt, they didn't want to use them, then, we would distribute them to charities. And we've done that. We've distributed probably about 5,500 pounds worth of vouchers to 5 or 6 children's charities and so on, locally and in Ireland. So we've done that. They're still trickling in, so we've not really put a final tally of it, but it's sitting at about 5,500 just now. So anyway, that's what we did, and that's how we're cracking on. But the trust itself is bigger than it's ever been. It's got more activists than it's ever had, and we're really, really pushing on with something which, well, it's probably a bit boring, really, isn't it? It's like saying we want all these people who are on the shareholders register to get in touch with us and so we can kind of unify and put us together and combine our voting power. And when you're shouting and bawling about, you're not happy with the signings or you're not happy with the board's behaviour, that seems like you want to do something much more immediate and much more, I don't know, vocal and whatever. But actually, this is the thing that needs to be done.
Thinking more with the trust.
Absolutely, and that can,
Okay, I can really.
yeah,
You can.
yeah, I can hear you.
My mic's not coming through right. That's how I've actually said the word all night. Sorry about that. I've been trying to fix it.
No, yeah, I can hear you. Okay,
But
yeah, I mean it is a
thing with
thing.
the trust going forward.
Yeah, that's right.
And now that my mic's working, if I can just play devil's advocate, Jeanette, I know a lot of people have been asking and spoke about it on our own forum. Do you think these protests are going forward, the way the team's starting to move forward and making signs that do you think protests are going to continue? Do you think it's a good thing?
Well, I mean, people don't protest for no reason.
Yeah.
I mean, they protest. Look, is anybody denying that we've had a couple of really great games and really enjoyed the football, which is what we all want? Is that the end? Is everything fine now? Do we just forget everything else that happened?
Exactly.
And do you know what I mean? So
maybe January.
Postpone what?
Like protest before games and things like that to see how, or even a couple of the windows shut a couple of months down the line.
There are no protests planned at the minute.
What?
So I don't.
That's my mistake. I've thought I read that they were open before every home game from now on.
No, there are no protests planned at the minute. What we're saying is
media reports. So again, Jeanette putting stuff out. So again, from different outlets, I say,
Yeah. So, no, I mean, I think, look, it's a tricky one, isn't it? Because what people want is when so we have, so let's say we get, oh, God forbid, I don't even want to say it, you know, you get cut by, you know, whatever, and doesn't go well on Sunday. Do people, it's like, oh, do something, why are the organisations not doing something? You know that?
Do you know what it is, Jeanette?
And you can't organise a protest and cancel a protest and organise a protest and cancel a protest every other day. You have to, you know, you have, and the protests aren't they about, well, we get beaten that game, or we didn't like this, or we didn't like that. They're about fundamentally saying this board is not running Celtic the way we want it to be run. You know, that doesn't mean to say they never get anything right, because, you know, that would be amazing if no group of people managed to ever get anything right. But they're not running it the way we want it to be run. There are fundamental structural problems with the way the board is. We have people who've been on there for
I looked it up, years.
Yeah, I can hear you. And they're not entitled to be there that length of time with it. They're not playing the role that they should play. Non-executive directors are supposed to play an independent role where they call the board, they keep the board on its toes, and they do what they're supposed to do. None of those people are doing that. They're in with the bricks, and they do not play their role. And no well-run company is run like that. And that doesn't matter if we have a couple of a run of good games, great, we all enjoy it, but that does not change that fundamental problem.
I'm a big believer in that when the Celtic club was all successful and things like that, people started looking into the board, but the problems was always there, Jeanette, behind the scenes when we were successful as well, weren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say that over their whole sort of 9-year-old run, they weren't doing their job. They weren't doing their job because we should have been so far out of sight of any other club at this point that shouldn't. What happened should never have happened last year. So I would say that they were just happy enough that their ambition is limited. They just wanted us to be just a little bit, sort of in front of them, just about, they don't want us to be sort of romping ahead and winning things. They want us to get what is it they want? An aspiration, not even one that's been met very well, to get to the group stages of, Champions League. Those kinds of things, really limited, self-limiting aspirations is what they have. And they just don't think about Celtic the way we think. Now, their argument to that is, you're just unrealistic, and you just want to run the club to wreck and ruin with debts. And of course we don't. But there's something in between that.
That's always a big issue to the Champions League qualifiers, into that they don't spend before the Champions League qualifiers, and it's the same story with Celtic every year. We fail to qualify for the group stage.
Yeah. So, there's lots of things that you and I and every other Celtic fan can sit down and say, why did they do this? Why did they do that? And see, even, you would think, it's a very simple thing. See, even if they said, no, there's a very good reason why we do it like this. Well, going to just, talk to us.
Yeah,
because
tell us.
The things that they do, see that. So we proposed a fans forum, right, about 2-3 years ago. I keep forgetting the sort of almost 2 years of the pandemic, as so whatever 2 years before that, maybe, I don't know. And we proposed a fans forum. That was a very specific thing. It would have had representatives of all of the organisations and any new organisations that came into play who were genuinely representative, actually had members who they speak for, and they would get to meet and have these discussions, because what Celtic does is they meet us all separately and then try and play us off, and it's only when we absolutely insist that we go in, all together. But anyway, so they do that, and we proposed that, and there was lots really long, detailed conversations with the company secretary, Michael Nicholson, about how this would work and what we would have and so on. And then and they were going to support it. And that's quite unusual, because they don't usually support anything we put forward. Right before it, the thing they put forward is effective. Well, no, it goes through. And then the very first, the one that they're going to meet, they just basically put out a thing saying, well, does anybody want to come to this? So you know what that means. What that means is people just turn up, and why wouldn't they? They've been invited to, why would they not? And you never get to the bottom of anything. Somebody asks a question, they say something, that's not good enough. So if you're in a meeting with, representative bodies, you press them on that till you get to the bottom. No, you just move on to the next question, and then you never get, so it becomes just a talking shop where they tell you things, and people might get to ask questions, but do they ever get a proper answer? And if they don't get a proper answer, is there anything they can do about it? No, because it just moves on to the next person. And it was such a dishonest thing to do. So we, after the first meeting, just put it out. We just said, we're having nothing to do with that. We're not in any way condoning what they've done here or giving that any credibility whatsoever. It's not that we don't want Celtic to speak to the fans. In fact, it was us that proposed the road shows, which they did a number of years ago, or in different parts of the country, which they've never done since, although they promised to. It's us that proposed the fans forum. So, I mean, we're quite happy for them to have that fans forum in that format if they want, but it wasn't what we asked for. So no, there's a real problem with this board, and it's getting worse, and I think they are probably as disconnected from the fans now than they have ever been.
Yeah. Has that come under the Peter Lorre regime, Jeanette, more so than previous CEOs?
Well, I mean, Peter Lorre was there for 17
long
years,
time.
21 years we've been in place, so it's hard to say what it was before that. So, he has had an influence right throughout that whole period and right up until very, very recently. Now, is Dominic Mackay going to be different? I don't know. I mean, he's had these things where he's invited the podcasters in. Great, talk to them if you want. That's absolutely fine. We're no opposed to any form of communication with any section of the Celtic support. But what we would say is none of this is about genuine representative democracy and holding the board to account. So you can meet people every day of the week without necessarily involving yourself in something where you'll be held to account. And that's the bit that they're keeping at arm's length, definitely.
Because what I was thinking myself, Jeanette, was Dominic Mackay's new winter report. Will he be able to make these changes that he wants? As you said, we have board members there, Jeanette, that are on the board for 13, maybe 12 years. Is he going to be able to make those changes while those people are still on the board?
Well, it's not his job to make those changes. It's the chairman of the company's job to make those changes. And I don't know what your view is on Ian Bankier.
Oh, you don't want to know?
Yeah, well, I think we're on the same page.
What does Celtic actually do?
Well, he occasionally comes out and makes public statements in which he calls the Celtic support racist, or he calls them anti-Semitic, or he makes disablest jokes, or he I don't know. He's I don't want to be personal. I don't want to
stick in the corner at a wedding.
I don't want to be personally abusive, but I don't know what he does. I really don't. But it's his job to make those things work. He's charged under the Provisions of Companies Act to do that.
Hey, we know you're in a hurry. We're only coming on for a wee while. Just wind it up if you want to talk a wee bit about your call out campaign. Let the guys know about that. So,
yeah, okay. So let me go back to this. So 2018, a couple of incidents which happened quite close to one another. One of which was a Celtic supporter who was heading back down after a game was brutally assaulted in Girvan by a crowd of Orange bandsmen who were heading back up to Motherwell from they'd been in Belfast, and they
bandsmen, she said, by the way.
Yeah, Orange bandsman, that's right. And they battered him to such an extent that he lost complaint in one eye. And so that happened. And the police in that division down in Ayrshire absolutely refused to call that a religious or racially aggravated assault. So that was the first thing. Then there was an incident at a Labour Party conference where a live streamed session, a very senior party person effectively just made an anti-Catholic joke. And then, of course, there was the horrible thing that everybody knows about where Canon Tom White was assaulted, spat, prisoners, terrorised outside Mass. And while these things are not unknown, it's no unknown that a priest has been assaulted or that church property has been handled. None of those things are unknown. It's no unknown that people get battered to, sometimes murdered. And it's no unknown for people to make anti-Catholic jokes. The three of them together, I don't know, we just thought, enough's enough here. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And we've had this long running, and again, both Labour and the SNP have been guilty of this long running public, veil over this, which is, using the word sectarianism to suggest that it's, the two sides are equal and all of that, when they know from that, the government knows from its own data that is not true, that is not the case. And we just thought, no, enough's enough. We have to call this out. If somebody is subjected to an assault or abuse on the basis of their Protestant religion, I will condemn that and oppose it, and I will call it out. But our campaign is a campaign against anti-Irish racism.
I can't believe that, Jeanette, that still goes on in the 21st century, because I live in Ireland, and if you say something about religion here, you get brought up for blasphemy, or you could get arrested. And how it's still going on in Scotland, it's just shocking, isn't it?
I mean, you say that, and I can tell you that within the past year, and I've told a few people this, my son was basically hunted off a building site because he was discovered. They assumed he was a Protestant because his name was Findlay, I'm assuming, and they hunted him off a building site when they discovered he was in fact Irish, because he used his passport as for his second induction.
Oh my God!
And these things happen. They do. Now, they happen much less often than they did in the past, and nobody's saying that we're in the same situation as we were in the past. But in actual fact, we're still hugely overrepresented in terms of religious aggravated assaults, religious aggravated crime of various natures. We're overrepresented among the poor. We're overrepresented among the prison population. There are still structural issues which impact on the Catholic and the Irish community in Scotland. And big problem that we have, because other communities also have those kinds of problems, but the big problem we have is the complete lack of recognition. So a refusal to recognise us as a multi-generational Irish community, an absolute refusal. So you either get told you're no Irish, or you're a plastic paddy, or you get told to go. It's one of the two. You can go home, or you're a plastic paddy. It's like one of the two. You can't say, well, my family's been here for really quite a long time, and I think we'll just stay, but we are of Irish descent, or we still regard ourselves as Irish. And that's what we're not allowed. Unlike any other, the Pakistani community, or the Italian community, or the Polish community, all of those communities are allowed to have their allegiance to the country of either their birth or their ancestry, except the Irish.
Is it genetic, Jeanette? Like learn from their parents growing up, that they see it from their own parents, and then it keeps going on to generations?
What, the fact that they behave like that?
Yeah. Like they learn off their parents and stuff like that.
It's most certainly no genetic. What it is political failure. It's an absolute political failure, because those people who are in leadership positions, who are in government positions, should have grasped this long ago. And and fair play to them, they will grasp other things, but they will not grasp this one. And that's why, coming back to the Angkor Thomor statues, that's a really important moment for us. Because that statue, as well as remembering something that happened a long time ago, is also saying to us, this is where this community came from, and this is a community that still holds allegiance and holds, a place in our hearts for the country, for where our parents and our grandparents and great-grandparents in some cases, or great-great-grandparents came from. And we're entitled to do that. It doesn't make us any less responsible citizens of the state that we live in. It just means that we're entitled to do that. We're entitled to play our Gaelic games. We're entitled to have our songs. We're entitled to have our Irish dancing. We're entitled to do all of those things, just like any other community. But somehow or another, that does not hold true when it comes to the Irish. And so that's why the memorial is really, really important. And the other thing is, and this has happened a few times, people say, why is the memorial in a church? So in this time of, greater lack of religion and so on, which is absolutely fine. People can be atheists if they want. But why is it in a church? And it's not necessarily, although it would be a perfectly good reason to do it, the fact that overwhelmingly, the vast and overwhelming majority of people who died were of the Catholic religion. It's not there because of that, because this wasn't a religious committee. It wasn't a group that came together under the church's auspices. This was a community group. It's there, I suppose, primarily, and when push comes to shove, because nobody else in Glasgow would give us space to have it. So it not only is about what happened in the past, but it speaks very visibly and physically to where we are now.
Amazing. Mark, should I take that to that there? Like, you're living in Glasgow, you see it firsthand, Mark, what's going on?
Just outside Glasgow, I live in Hamilton, but I didn't know that was the reason it get put up at the chapel, was because there wasn't another site put for the council. That was the kind of level you were up against. The council were just not entertaining any kind of helping you in any way.
They kept offering us incredibly inappropriate things. It was almost insulting. Incredibly inappropriate things that they were offering. They would have basically been happy if it had been, in a field at the roads. It was awful. And then when it came in, and they kept this up, they were remarkably consistent. I'll say that for them, because when it came to the unveiling day, we worked very productively with the police about organising, because we knew there would be huge numbers, and at various points it wasn't clear what the rules would be. We knew the rules might change as we moved towards it, and all of that was going on, so it was tricky. And we just kept in constant communication in order to make sure that happened safely, and we had as close to the day that we'd planned that we could. And we asked for them to just close the Abercrombie Street off for maybe 2 hours, just to sort of make sure that everybody could spread out on the road and so on and so forth. And they wrote back to us and said, well, this was like maybe 9-10 weeks before it. Still, we need 12 weeks notice, and we need £4,000, and we need you to take it. £1,000 worth of public liability insurance. So to be quite honest, I didn't even answer that. I just never.
They tried to paw you off by saying that, Jeanette, didn't they?
And they actually said, well, we'll do our best to help you, but your event might not be able to go ahead. And I thought, no, this event is going ahead. I don't care if I have to sort of direct traffic myself. This event is going ahead, and it did go ahead. And it went. And the police were great, and they did everything that they were supposed to do. I would have been happier if they hadn't been quite so visible at the outset, but it was great. It was fine, and we worked well with them. In fact, I haven't written to them, and I did intend to write to them, and I will do that, just to say, thanks for everything happening as nicely as it does, because this wasn't a public order event. This wasn't something that was meant to be a battleground. This was a community coming together. So a somber event, but also a celebratory event.
Exactly.
Well, we'll wind that up. Let you go, Jeanette. It was a bit longer than you said. Thanks very much for coming on. Hopefully, again, we can maybe get into a wee bit more depth about everything.
Absolutely.
Jeanette, thanks very much.
It's always a Friday night, though.
No, it's not always a Friday night. We just
All right, well,
change it. It's just we're going. Once you
okay.
get we're going to start just talking about last night's game and Sunday's game.
Yes. Yep. Okay, well, I'll let you get on with that, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. It was a really great old European night last night, wasn't it? It was lovely.
It was great to see the fans back. I got goosebumps when I heard "You Never Walk Alone" again at the start of the match.
I'd forgotten how great the lights at 67 minutes looks. I'd just forgotten. We got sort of used to it, didn't we? And then you've not seen it for so long. It just looked absolutely brilliant. No, it was great. Although I have to say I did laugh very much when the announcer said, "Could people please try and no stand in close proximity to others?" And I was thinking, how are we going to do that?
I know. Jesus.
Anyway,
Yes, thanks very much, Jeanette.
Okay,
Thanks,
enjoy the rest of your chat.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for asking. Bye.
So, our next part of the show, we're going to talk about last night's game against Yalbak. We're going to have a preview of Hearts.
We need to get these mics sorted out. Just hang up all our calls, Paul. Now.
Yep.
Hello.
Yeah, better.
Is that better?
Yeah.
I don't know what happened there, Paul.
I think she could have had a mic on, Mark, or something like that,
Was it Jeanette that mic on?
I think so, could have, yeah.
I thought maybe we'd left one. I thought we'd maybe another call open, kind of, do you know what I mean? More than one, like audio call open.
Are we off here now, yeah?
What? No, we're still on.
Oh. Alright.
Does that sound any better, lads?
So, our second part of the show, we're going to talk about last night's game.
But Terry said, Terence is saying it's perfect on the live chat.
Yeah.
Barry's ready to come on, Paul, but just even before we go on here, we didn't do much shout-outs there. That didn't really go as well as me and Paul had planned it to because of the sound mix-ups here, but just as usual, lads, thanks for all the support. Hope you've enjoyed that. Hopefully we can get Jeanette on and other people like Jeanette on to just talk about general Celtic, what they're doing for it. I mean, Jeanette, she kind of splits opinions with people, but I asked her the question because that's what
that's the media again, Mark, putting out stories again, weren't this?
That was my only problem with it. I didn't really agree with the protest on Sunday, but it had already been arranged in that. But the way I'd read it, there were going to be a protest before every home game, you know.
And she just said there wasn't. So that's the media again, Mark, putting out false information to things like. And you know what? Jeanette gave us an interesting things back that we didn't know about the boards. That they're constantly refusing meetings with them. They're suggesting, they're constantly shutting them down, and then they're coming up with similar things then that Celtic Football Club did that already the Celtic Trust suggested to them, but they're doing it a different way to the Celtic Trust. Like everyone knows there's change coming, but will change come, like she said, Mark, will change come on the Dominic McKay? We don't know, really, do we?
Well, it's not up to Dominic McKay.
No, it's Ian Banker's the problem.
I mean, if the board members are going to stick with their guns, Paul, it's going to be a battle of wits between Dominic McKay and the board.
I think it's Banker's the problem, Mark.
Then it's coming down to who does Desmond back. It'll come down to
exactly.
If this comes to a kind of war between McKay and Big Ange and the football department and the board, it's going to come down to what Desmond wants. And I think, I mean, without saying anything, I mean, Ian Banker's not a young man anymore.
No.
I think common sense would tell Desmond it's time to reshuffle the board.
But he seems to be kind of a main problem there, Mark, doesn't he? Kind of what we're getting off Jeanette. He seems to be the main man for all this kind of disconnect as well, himself and Peter Lord, don't they, Banker?
Well, I definitely think Banker was was an ally to the Wolves. I think they were kind of in the same kind of boat, because if your CEO's sitting there in the board meeting and your chairman's sitting there in the board meeting and they're both on the same page and fighting for the same thing, they're going to get their own way.
Exactly. And now there could be differences between Dominic McKay and Bankier, do you know what I mean? Because we're kind of, what I'm kind of seeing is, Mark, is
I don't think Mackay will stand back and
no,
Bankier or any or them try to like hold them back. And if they do, I imagine he'll be straight on the phone to them.
because if he wants to modernise the club, Mark, and if Bankier's not on the same page as him, change isn't going to come, is it? You know.
Carry on the roof, Paul, right?
Yep. So now we're going to talk about last night's great match. I would say, having Celtic fans in. As Jeanette said, it was great to hear 67 sung by the Celtic fans. How much did you miss seeing that in the live chat? It was great to see Celtic playing again the way the fans enjoy free-form football. Barry, was just a great night all out, wasn't it? And welcome to the show.
I don't think he's on yet. There he's there. You there, Barry?
Yeah, here, guys.
Oh, thanks very much for coming on again, Barry, bud.
Barry, it was great. Firstly, Barry, just not about the match, but having the Celtic fans in the stadium, it makes all the difference to a Celtic team, doesn't it?
Oh, without a doubt, without a shadow of a doubt. You know, I've said it previously. That's of everybody. You know, the difference the fans make. That they give, you know, the players extra 10-15% to their game, and I think we've seen that. We've seen that in the early stages. The fans coming back. You know, the atmosphere that they can create. You know, the demands that the fans have when they're in the stadium. You know, it's like they don't allow the players to take their foot off the pedal. You know, they've got that expectation and demand. But what a difference! You know, what a difference! Even hearing it, you know, even sitting watching it last night.
Yeah, I got goosebumps, Barry. Goosebumps.
Oh, it was terrific, absolutely terrific. And you know, just long may it continue. Just hope there are no more bumps in the road in terms of, you know, stadium closures or what have you. You know, but yeah, absolutely brilliant to have the fans back. Buzzing.
Mark, you agree with that, Jared? It was actually, I'm just going on about like having an edge over your opposition, and for me, the Celtic fans are an edge over your opposition, Mark, aren't there?
Oh, definitely, Paul. 100%. Just it's great to see the fans back. I'd have loved to have been there last night myself, but I mean, we've spoke about how the fans have got to drive the team on, and that's what Celtic need. It must have been weird for Celtic players last season. Really, really, not just Celtic players, but all of them. And I suppose a lot of even in the smaller teams, and I suppose a lot of the players maybe wouldn't mind it because they're usually struggling every week and that. But Celtic teams feed off the fans.
I was reading on. Sorry,
We're not really ones for like booing, just like during things like that. Will encourage the team unless it's a pure stinker. Do you know what I mean? I've booed a few teams off at half time over the years, but that's when I've had real stinkers. But unless it's a real stinker, the Celtic fans will just keep backing them at the final whistle, and then
I was reading
pleasure at the result.
I was reading the Yardback keeper on Twitter. He said that there was times during the game he couldn't concentrate because of the atmosphere at Celtic Park. Like it just shows, Mark, what the Celtic supporters do for this team. You know, it's unbelievable. And it could have been, I'm not saying it was one of the reasons, but it could have played some part last season for the team that we did. The fans weren't there to back them, Barry. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I think, God, months ago on the podcast, I kind of said, I feel that, you know, the Celtic players are struggling without the fans. And, you know, on the other side of the city, I think they were thriving under the lack of pressure from their own fans. But yeah, I mean, like you say, the atmosphere last night, I mean, I can't remember what minute, but the moment of the match where all the Celtic fans were doing the huddle,
yeah,
it's just, honestly, it's just a joy to behold. It's really great to see that. And I think Kyogo, he was sitting in the stand watching that.
Couldn't believe it.
These guys are going to thrive. And I actually had a conversation with a pal of mine. You know, the last two performances at home, Dundee and Jablonec, have been absolutely night and day from what we were used to last season. But I honestly believe that, you know, Sunday's game and last night, but most Sundays, they won that game 6-0. Probably would have won it, but I just think, you know, the fans, along with sort of Ange's philosophies, is they just kept on going and going. They never let off the pedal once. And again, for me, a big part of that is the fans. You know, the fans give the players that extra edge, that to thrive.
You there, Barry?
Got knocked off.
Close Barry, hadn't we?
Friday the 13th, lads, huh? Friday the 13th, huh?
He's still there. Oh.
Are you there? Just smile him, tag him up, Mark, and ring him again. Miles downstairs, and about this Croatian lad, Janovic from Lega Rosso. So Veronica rang her dad for me today, and he was trying to find out about that for me. And what I'm hearing is that this deal, Mark, could be off.
It's not isn't it?
Yeah, because when I've seen on Twitter, it looks like Lega are looking for 2.5 million, and Celtic are looking a bit apart from that 2.5 million mark what Lega are looking. So it looks like Celtic could come in another bid, Mark, maybe 2 million or 1.8 with add-ons, but at the moment that deal is not close to be done, Mark. So like I
who's coming up with these valuations for this, Paul? Is it
I don't
Ange? Is it Ange and Mackay that are talking about it and deciding whether they're no worth the money? Because if it is, well,
I don't know, Mark, because as you said there, Mackay's only in the door, he's going to need someone maybe at his side, Mark. I mean, so someone is there saying, no, we're not going to give that much. Sure, it be God, Mark, the agents come in and give a price as well. You know, this is what they're looking for. Can you come up with this? You know what I mean? So,
see about Edward.
Yeah.
His agent, look, this is the money we're looking for. You go and find a deal. Pardon me. You go and find a deal that's going to get us that money. And if they don't, well.
Because Mark, when Veronica was asking my dad, Veronica's dad was saying, the Polish league is like Celtic for years. They're selling all their best assets for nothing. And with the pandemic, Mark, and stuff like that, the Polish teams want money. You know, they're not going to be selling cheap anymore on the cheap. Do you know what I mean? It's like Celtic, Mark. We wanted more for higher. Would you blame Lega Rosso, Mark, if they feel what we're hearing about this lad from Croatia, Mark, that he's supposed to be brilliant? You will be demanding a bit extra, Mark, what you can get. And 2.5 million, Mark, isn't out of Celtic's way.
No, we've spent that kind of money on rubbish before. Do you know what I mean? I think that's Barry back now. Are you there, Barry?
Yeah, here, guys. So I don't know what.
I know what you were saying there. Miles asked us there about Janovic, and I got Vanka to ring her dad. This deal could be off. That Celtic are unwilling to pay 2.5 million what they were asking for, and Celtic are supposed to be way off that. It's back to what you were saying a couple of pods back. If they're asking for money within Celtic's price range, go in and put in the nearest bid to that price and get the player in instead of messing around with fees. You know?
Yeah, I'd be surprised if Celtic were the $2.5 million price tag. We obviously don't really know what's happening. There's conflicting reports tonight, I think, guys, isn't there? One report in Poland is saying the deal looks like it's off. There's another one in Croatia saying no, it's very much on. So it's which one is there. If Juranovic was indeed £2.5 million, I really don't think Celtic would be balking at that. I think that's a price that they'd be more than willing to pay. It's not a high end. It's not a 6-7 million.
And his wages aren't going to be big either as well.
Even if Celtic have went in with a low bid, the other day they said the deal's closer. There's only one more obstacle or one more step or something, wasn't it? So
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
The step is just agreeing the fee. So just because they've no agreed a fee or Wedges knocked back the first offer doesn't mean that the deal's off. Do you know what I mean? Celtic's went in and chanced her out with, I don't know if it was
a starting bid, Mark, or something like that. Do you know what I mean? Test the waters, yeah.
Maybe they've went in with a bid of 2 million. So saying no, we want 2.5. So maybe they'll get in with an offer of 2.3 and it'll get accepted. But I wouldn't say a deal's off, a £2.5 million deal's off our off completely out of
Like
the fee. I really don't.
Terence is saying there now that on the live chat that Lega had a replacement right back and that their own deal for their replacement fell through. And maybe that could be holding them up. You know?
Well, that's another thing as well, because I mean, sometimes you need everything to, all the stars to align before a move can get through. So maybe they're holding off as well for something like that.
If I hear more, I'll let you know. But like I was saying, Barry, like Monica's dad was saying, like that because the pandemic and over the years, the Polish league they'd sell all their best assets, Max, or their best players would go to Germany, and most of their best players actually for the national team actually kind of play outside Poland. They actually don't play in Poland. They play maybe in Germany. There's a few in Croatia. There's a few down in the Championship in England. But the teams in Poland have kind of came to a stage as well, Barry, that they're sick of selling their players on the cheap, much like Celtic have been doing for years, and they want to get value for their players now because of the pandemic, Barry. And you can understand that as well, Barry. Like football is changing, and clubs need money as well now. You know.
Yeah, definitely. And you know what? You're absolutely right, Paul. You can understand it. You know, unfortunately, that's just life and that's just football. You know, it's like our situation. You know, for example, you know, Moussa Dembele. You know, if he was playing in the English Premiership, he would have went for double what Celtic got for him. But unfortunately, the reality is he was playing in Scotland. It's not regarded worldwide as a top league, and therefore, you know, £20 million I think we got for him. That is a fair price. Now I can understand, you know, what you're saying. Legia, they'll want as much money as they possibly can, but there's loads of different.
It has to be realistic too, Barry. Yeah,
absolutely, and there's loads of different circumstances. Like you said there, the pandemic, the fact that they got knocked out. Was it the Champions League? They got knocked out of the Europa. So that'll determine actually. You know what? We need to get funds back in the door, and clubs are well aware that. Celtic are well aware that. So it could be very well be that Celtic were waiting to find out their situation with regards to European football before they made a bid, and that might determine how much they bid. And you know, you're absolutely right, Paul. You know, Legia will want, as any Polish club, any Eastern European club will do. They'll want as much money for their assets as they can possibly get. But like I say, unfortunately, we don't always get it. Like we wouldn't have probably accepted, you know, the £13.5 million for Ayer 2 seasons ago or a season ago when he was really flourishing. But the reality is, you know, we're in that situation where we had to. No Champions League money, pandemic, the fact he's in last year's contract, we had to just basically take that one on the chin. And it's the same for any club across Europe. Everybody's in the same boat. Every player within the team has got a price. And I'd imagine that Celtic, if it's Juranovic indeed that they're going for, they'll be negotiating with Legia what they believe price is and come to some sort of conclusion.
Like I just saw there today, like in 2009, 80 million Real Madrid got Ronaldo from Manchester United, and 2021 Man City paid 100 million for Jack Grealish. It just shows over the years how ridiculous, Mark, that money has got, like, hasn't it, in football? Do you know what I mean?
But what would 80 million back then be?
That's what I'm saying, like,
do you know
that's what I'm saying, Mark, how the value of money has gone up in football. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's going to be a matter of time, I say, we're going to have a player sold for £1 billion or something, I say.
Well, there probably will be in time. Celtic will sell a player for £50 million.
The Huns will still be saying that Morales is worth 10.
Well, I'm right. 10 years ago, would you have ever said Celtic would have sold a player for £25 million?
No.
Do you get? That's what I mean. I said on the forum a while back about it. I'm going back a few years. I said, how do you know that in a few years' time, like your Ayer? I mean, how do you know that Ayer with 3-4 years in his contract, if he'd went on the way he would want it, and without the pandemic and things like that, how do you know we wouldn't have got 30 plus million for him?
That's one thing, Mark, you have to give Peter Ronaldo, isn't it, Mark? His way of getting money into the club, like, didn't this?
Gets the top. Well, he always got the top whack for transfer fees. There's no doubt about it. But there'll come a time in Celtic they'll sell a player for 30 million and then it'll be 35 million. It'll gradually go up. But at the same time, teams down in England will be paying £200 million for players. You know, I mean, that'll be it will just kind of balance itself out that way. We'll still be so far behind them, but we'll still be getting crazy money to us. but average money down in England.
Mm-hmm.
Lukaku, I mean, away back.
Ridiculous.
Away back to Chelsea after so long for millions again. It's just funny, crazy money.
Like, how many times really? Like, Lukaku had 1 or 2 good seasons, I say, Barry, in the Premier League, and that was with Everton. You know, he really kind of didn't do with Manchester United when he was there. Well, Jose Mourinho was the manager as well there, but you know, like, we're not going to get into transfers now, so I want to get back to mostly last night. Barry, in the game, how important was it to have a strong keeper in that game last night with Joe Hart saves?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think we touched on it before. What a difference it makes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what a difference it makes to sort of so many different elements of the football
Yeah.
club. You know, to the supporters in the stands and at home watching, having the confidence that, you know, that this guy's going to pull off saves, that, you know, you're confident that you're not going to lose a goal, or, you know, he's going to be in a position to make the save. And, you know, I think we touched on it before as well. The defence as well, you know, the defence will be brimming
Exactly.
with confidence. That's 2 clean sheets in a row now. But just knowing you've got that presence and experience and calibre of Joe Hart playing in behind you, it is massive. It really is. And like I think I said before, and I think you guys agreed, you know, to see his name on the team sheet in the first leg last week was a massive lift for me personally.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because with all due respect, you know, if it had been any of the other 2 names, Ben or Barkas, you're sitting there thinking, you know, it's unlikely that we're going to keep a clean sheet. You know, they've just not been producing the goods. But to have Hart there, and, you know, the 2 saves that you made, and
they were top saves, Barry. Like, he had very little to do in the game. Like, but that just shows his experience and concentration.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say, Paul. He did have, I mean, don't get me wrong, he started a lot of attacks, you know, with the ball at his feet, but in terms of actually goalkeeping, he had very little to do in the game. And then, you know, just due to a couple of errors or a couple of lapses in concentration from the defence, he was then called upon to make these saves, and he done it. And there were 2 terrific saves, there really were. Again, that only bodes well for going forward.
Did you notice as well, with one of the saves, the one that the boy went right through the middle, and he kind of stayed big in the goal? Right,
Yeah.
after he made the save right away, Starfelt and Welsh are right on top of him, thanking him.
Yeah.
They knew they'd made a mistake, they were up thanking him for kind of saving
Yeah.
the neck.
Do you know what, though?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And I was thinking about last night that when Barkas and Bain were in goal, that there was so much pressure on our defence not to make a mistake, Barry, and that's maybe why they were making mistakes, Barry, as well, because they knew that they had a weak goalkeeper behind them, and the pressure on them not to make a mistake, Barry. Like, if you're under pressure, Barry, you will make mistakes, and maybe that's why I know that they're kind of, I'm not saying they're more relaxed, but there's more confidence knowing that they have Joe Hart behind them, and with Joe Hart making those 2 good saves because of a lapse in concentration by defence, it just breeds confidence across that back four.
Absolutely, and confidence throughout the whole team.
Yeah.
You know, not just about it's confidence throughout the whole team, knowing, you know, Joe Hart's goalkeeping ability was displayed last night with those 2 saves. But like I said, we talked about it before, the actual stature of Joe Hart, the name of Joe Hart. You know,
exactly.
We talked about it before. You know, an ex-England #1, played in World Cups, played in European Championships, won the Premier League. You know, 70-odd caps for his country. You know, that stature of player breeds confidence out to the team. But like I say, last night we saw that sprung into action when, like we say, literally didn't have very much to do in terms of making saves throughout the whole match, and then he's called upon to make these saves. And like you say, Paul, that shows your concentration levels, because you know yourself, any goalkeeper or even defender who's not having to do their job, not having to defend, if the team's on the front foot a lot, it's sometimes, you know, a word.
You do slip off. Exactly. You would. That's like second. You just slip out of concentration, and that could be. But it just showed, Mark, the experience that Joe Hart has brought to the club already, doesn't it?
Just his experience, even his kind of overall effect he said on the defence.
Yeah.
You know, she says just the guys knowing that there's somebody Joe Hart's experience and ability behind him will give the full defence a massive boost. I mean, I thought Taylor last night, I mean,
He got stick from us, Mark. Yeah, we gave him stick.
But what a performance he put in last night, really. And Ralston. Ralston made one mistake. That was, he went barging into the back of the guy. And the commentator even says he was lucky not to get booked for that. But that was only a mistake Ralston made. the only mistake I seen Taylor making was he was doing a bit early. He's wanting to back after a bit.
You sent me something about Ralston there the other day, Mark, about what Andrew was saying to him. He was saying that from day one he's bought into the way I want to do things, and from day one Ralston bought into that, and he's reaping the rewards back. Like, Ralston's a different player, like, to what we thought he would be, isn't he?
Oh, it's night and day, totally night and day. And there even Miles is saying on the live chat as well about Rogic. I thought Rogic had a great game as well last night.
Mm-hmm. It's like the whole...
There's players we've
wrote off.
That's what I was saying. There's players we've wrote off, Paul, that they're stepping up. If it's in fair play to them. I mean, maybe it is going to take a bit of time for the players to adjust to the system that Ange wants, but there's no... I mean, there's no... Could you actually say any player that you said a kind of negative effect on?
No, I think every game, Barry, I watch Celtic, we seem to be getting better and better. Fitness levels seem to be going up better. Like, the more time these players spend with Ange, the better they're getting.
Yeah, you know what? See the last two games. I kid you not, the last two games, Dundee and Jablonec, that's two of the best footballing performances I've seen at Celtic Park in a long, long time. And you can see exactly what Ange is trying to do, and the philosophy and the style that he's trying to introduce into the team. That's evident. And see, as time goes on, that'll get better and better. And the quality and level of football you're going to see at Celtic Park is going to be an absolute joy to watch. I can just see it. And you know what? I don't really want to put a negative slant on it, but I think the last two performances have typified what an issue Odsonne-Edouard up front has been for.
I was just about to ask you that. Was the two changes, Barry, in the last two games because he came to a decision, he had a replacement for Edouard, he doesn't need to play him, and that's the difference in the attack that we have. Kyogo, who he defends from the attack, and he runs his legs off, and it opens up the space, Barry, that Celtic need to play Ange's system.
You know what, Paul? He never stops.
No.
Kyogo. And you know, and I think that was an issue for the game at Tynecastle, because we played the same style, right? But the difference being was when the ball got into midfield areas, that's when we then looked for what we're going to do going forward. But Edouard was just standing static, and that gives the midfield a problem as to, well, what do we hit here? But see the last two games, that little Kyogo, whatever he's, the Japanese fella, he just never stops, and he is an absolute joy for the midfield, because the runs he made one in the first minute. He should have actually scored. He went through one-on-one, but he just makes those runs non-stop, and it just gives us so many options going forward, because we've got him, we've got Christie, we've got Abada on one side, we've got James Forrest, there's Turnbull, there was Rogic. You know, it was just night and day. It really was. And you know what? I must admit, see when they brought Kyogo off and Edouard came on, I need to be honest, I kind of sank a wee bit for the simple reason that I knew our attacking threat was going to be completely different, because Edouard
was coming.
And it was, and I'm not going to slag him off, Edouard, but he he's kind of lacking movement and he's lacking enthusiasm. Again, was pretty evident, and our levels for me just dropped slightly when Kyogo went off.
And it did in the Dundee game as well, Barry. It dropped off. There was lack of options there, Barry. There was lack of options.
Yeah, and if that's what we've got to look forward to going forward, you know, what a great time to be a Celtic fan, you know, with this style of things. Like I say, when the players come in, because there is going to be more players coming in, and this style starts to click, and this team clicks going forward, because like I say, with more games that come, the better the style is going to get, the more adapted the team are going to come to it. It's going to be a terrific to watch. It really is a great brand of football that he's trying to introduce.
I stick by it, and I said to Mark the other day, like, I stick by it, like, once this transfer window closes and the dust settles down, Barry, and we have the players that Ange wants, I think Celtic could be unstoppable. Like, you know, I really do. Like, I really think that no one will be able to keep up with the pace. Like, cause, like, Barry, they don't stop. Like, the Celtic team goes for the 90 minutes now. Like, they don't stop. You know?
Well, you know what? If you remember back a few weeks ago when Ange was mic'd up for his training session, and you know, he said that, didn't he? He said that, and he got a bit of flack, I think, in the media, and he got ridiculed a wee bit from certain pundits and stuff. So, when he said the words, we do not stop, we keep going, we stop at the end when the referee blows his whistle. He says if the other teams want to stop, fine, that benefits us, but we do not stop. And look at the benefits we're reaping, because that's exactly what's happening. Look at Dundee, like I said to you, 6-0 up at Dundee, we're going for 7. Naturally, it's easy to take your foot off the pedal. See, when you hit 3-4-0, the natural thing to do is you take your foot off the pedal, you ease up a bit, you realise the game's won, you kind of try and save your legs a wee bit, conserve a bit of energy, maybe, be scared to pick up a wee injury or now. That didn't happen. That didn't happen at all on Sunday. 6-0, going for 7. Same last night. Like I say, I think we fell off it a wee bit when Edouard came on, but that for me was due to the fact that maybe the attacking options weren't there, because he's not the same player as Kyogo. He'll not go all day. But like I say, Ange's clearly getting his message over.
Wouldn't they?
He seems to be getting more and more settled down as well, don't he, Starfelt, don't he? He seems to be settling in, don't he?
There was that slight blip in the second half where he's went to ground. He shouldn't have really gone to ground, but I quite like the look of Starfelt. He seems just like an old-fashioned defender. He's not going to spray 80-yard passes like Van Dijk maybe did, or Julian likes to. He's just going to get the ball and play it simple. But first and foremost, I think he's a defender, and that's what you're doing.
And that's what we needed.
I've been paying close attention to set pieces against, and he's getting his head to quite a few of them, which is a breath of fresh air, because we never had that a lot last year. It's normally the opposition getting their head to corners and free kicks, but he seems to be throwing his head in there and getting into quite a few. So that was quite refreshing to see. I was quite impressed with Starfelt.
Mark, again, Christie had another good game. I know they're kind of sitting down at negotiating table, and they're asking here on the live chat as well, should Celtic maybe get Christie to sign a new contract? But I don't want him to sign a 1-year contract, because then he's going to leave next season. If Christie's going to sign, we want him to sign a long-term contract.
Oh, definitely, same as Edouard, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
Sign a 1 year's extension. No for me. If he's not going to sign a contract extension, he shouldn't be in the team. I said that about Christie. I don't care how well he's playing. If he's no planning being here, he shouldn't be here. Although he said as long as he's a Celtic player, he's showing up well in training and things like that. But how's that planning? If you're playing players that aren't going to be here even in a couple of weeks' time, how's that?
And that's the problem, Mark. Then, because if Christie saw a week or two left in the transfer, we're not going to get the proper replacement. Then we could have got during the transfer window. You
don't know that, Paul. We might have somebody lined up. We might have even somebody get one of the young players in. I mean, we're not going to. You can't tell me that we're going to go forward playing Ryan Christie as a winger.
No, and I think that's the best thing where Andrew's saying, because
he's kind of.
We have Abada that can play both lines. Forrest has actually played on the left when Abada was playing the right. We know Kyogo can play the left, can play across any part. That's the best thing about Ange.
I don't think Kyogo's going to be our striker for going forward. If we sell it, there'll still be a replacement striker brought in, I think.
I think, Mark, that Kyogo could be, if he was our main striker, and I know, Barry, would you agree with me in this, that if he was our main striker, that he'd be targeted for heavy tackles because of he seems light physique. Would he be a target for big defenders, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's just natural in the Scottish game, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
When you've got somebody that's got the pace and the movement, Kyogo, what Scottish defenders do is they give him a boot, don't they? That's what happens. They don't like it. They don't like players constantly running, because he just doesn't stop.
No,
Kyogo
and he will get us free kicks in danger positions because of his movement, Barry.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's early doors, isn't it? He's only played sort of two or three starts now, but the more I'm seeing of him, Mark, the more I think he might be the one. See these runs he makes. He reminds me. He's not the same player, but it reminds me of the George Cadet runs. These wee runs that he's making and these positions he's taking up. I personally think you potentially brought in as a left winger. I do. But see, as long as he's playing like this, it's going to be difficult to oust him out of the team. At the start, if he's producing goals and performances like he has in the last 3 matches, it's going to be tricky, isn't it?
I don't know, but that's fine. I don't think he'll be the team. I just think he'll be played in the left wing.
I think it's a big deal that he's keeping Edward out of the team anyway, Mark, isn't it?
It's been a case he's been brought in and Ange's seen that he could do a better job as a number 9 than Edward is now, and it is really
Yeah.
but I think long term, I think he will play more. Well, we spoke about it as well with Mikey, how it looks as if Ange's going to play the three attack on, like switching on, interchanging on constantly during the game, going from one wing to the other. But if Edward leaves a day, I think it's going to be a new striker will be brought in, and Kyogo will play it on the left, and Abada or Forrest out on the right.
I think as well, Mark, what do you think? Because again, his name's cropped up again today, and I know he was on social media last night. Yeah, Christian Lovric.
Yeah.
You know, if he comes in, he's an out-and-out left winger. Would you reckon that could potentially mean that Kyogo will be used as a striker? Because if he does, see if Lovric doesn't come in, I'd be tended to think that Kyogo's going to play left. See if Lovric does come in, I think he more than likely will be through the middle.
Because I can't see
Kyogo is a number 10.
Like a false number 9.
No, but see, even like if you're playing the 4-2-3-1, play him at the cam number 10.
Mm-hmm.
See when you see him, the runs that he does making things. I know you said he looks like a daddy, but see with his actual control and skill and speed. Why just one of the players, see like your Lubo kind of player, you just say here, there's the ball, going, do what you want to do with it. See that kind of free roaming role.
Yeah, but wherever he plays, you know, you need to have him in the team right now. And like I say, the way he's going, his performances the last 3 games have been massively impressive. And long may that continue. But
sorry, go on by what you were saying. Sorry, go on, finish there.
No, carry on, mate.
Just go on what you were saying there about that the Celtic fans noticed that. And Mark, I'll ask you the same question. And that we knew that the Hearts game, that there was lack of movement up top, and the Beachland game, there was lack of movement up top from Edward, and minute Kyogo comes in and he's kind of basically straight into stand. Do you think that Ange actually saw what we saw, that he's seen this lack of movement from Edward, that he's not able to play his system with Edward in that team, that Edward is slowing down the attack up top?
I do, yeah. I mean, I think it's abundantly clear because as soon as Kyogo was available, obviously he had to do his isolation period, and you know he hadn't even trained a training session, and he came on against Hearts. But like I say, we lost that game. You know, the Michelin game as well went out, and Edward is a problem for Ange's style. He really is, and I honestly don't think he'll be as missed as potentially what I thought he would have been. Because for me, like I say, when he came on yesterday, I don't want to say heart sank a bit, but you know, I kind of knew that, well, our attacking threat's going to drop now because he's not going to make the same runs and have the same energy as Kyogo does. So for me, there's no doubt that Ange has identified that.
You could see it was obvious when you could look at the top dynamic of the team changed the way they were playing. Everything just when Edward was on the park, it kind of affected the kind of rhythm they were playing it because of
definitely
that kind of movement up front.
Definitely, and see with Kyogo's movement, that also brings your Christies, your Abadas, your Turnbulls and that brings them right into the game because he's non-stop movement. Defenders have to track him. That then leaves the space for your Turnbulls and your Rogged. Look at the space that Turnbull had to get a few shots away last night. He probably doesn't have that if Edward's there because Edward's sort of static standing in these places that Turnbull was taking up last night.
But Turnbull played brilliant as well last night.
Very good, very good. And you know what was crazy? Turnbull, you know, didn't even realise he's never played in front of a Celtic crowd up until the last couple of games.
Exactly.
You know, he's never sampled that. He's sort of played, you know, behind closed doors. So this is him sort of, again, another player thriving with a crowd behind him.
People were writing him off for the last couple of weeks saying, he wasn't getting the Ange ball thing and all that. But I looked up, we're forgetting the guy's only played about 70 odd professional games, Barry.
Yeah.
Oh, he is 22.
It was only kind of January when he came into the first team, Mark, wasn't it? Around December, January last season, wasn't it?
But
you know?
That's right.
Celtic, he's not really played a lot of football for his age, so maybe the injury has put him back a kind of year, but he really, last night, I mean, no position wasn't the best, but for me, there's no any there weren't any worse than your bottom half of the SPL teams. And that's what we're talking about. These guys like Taylor, Ralston, they're good enough against these level of teams. But I thought Turnbull, that was one of his best, not just because he's got, but just I thought it was one of his best performances in a Celtic shirt. He really seemed to put in a shift and doing a right good. Do you know what I mean? We used to moan even about his fitness. He was always coming off and he was always looking a bit as if he was blowing out his arse at times. But I think he really stepped up last night.
Yeah, he did. You know what? I don't think there was a failure at all last night. I really don't. I think everyone to a man was.
What do you think of Callum McGregor in kind of a deeper role, kind of giving the passes thing? Like,
I think he's really coming on. I think he's really embracing it. You know, we spoke about McGregor before, you know, and I've said he's one of my favourite players, McGregor. But last year, you know, there was no getting away from the fact that he struggled last year. But again, I kind of put that down to the fact that I don't want to go back to more Lennon, but well, I was thinking more Lennon, Paul, in the sense that, you know, there was no real game plan or strategy. So for me now, Callum McGregor's under instruction. Big Ange is telling him exactly what he wants to do. So he's going out knowing what he needs to do, and he's doing it well. He's controlling it. He's getting that ball. He's the go-to guy. Whereas, like you say, last year it was Scott Brown. You know, Scott Brown was the first receiver, if you like, getting the ball out of defence. And for me, I said before, I would always have had Callum McGregor. But I think the last 2 or 3 games, he's been exceptional, Callum McGregor. He's been absolutely fantastic.
I think what I'm seeing against Ange and thing as well, Barry, is that when he knows he needs to play an attacking team, like we've seen Zorro taken out of the lineup in the last 2 games because maybe Ange knows that he can play an attacking teams more often, that we don't need a defensive midfielder, right? Where does McCarthy fit in now?
Well, you know something, I think you're right. I think Mikey might have mentioned it on the podcast on Sunday. Against a Dundee, with all due respect, you don't need to have
you don't need it,
midfielders. Yeah. You really don't. However, personally going forward, I think you'll see McGregor and McCarthy in there, and I think a sort of Rogic and Turnbull will sort of fight it out for that more attacking role. I don't think. I know what you're saying in terms of horses for courses, and you know you don't need McCarthy, but I think McCarthy will come in, and I think he'll be a mainstay, and I think McCarthy and McGregor will be your sort of two. I don't want to say sitting midfielders, but McCarthy might even give McGregor a bit of freedom to roam a bit forward, because we know what attacking threat McGregor can be. You know, so like I say, last night it was McGregor sort of being the sitter and the controlling guy, and you had Rogic and Turnbull sort of attacking. I think you might find McCarthy comes in. I don't think there's any doubt about it. McCarthy will be a starter for Celtic once he's up to the speed. And like I say, I think it'll be Rogic and Turnbull that sort of play the more attacking, but not both of them, I don't think.
Do you agree with that, Mark, yeah?
I think McCarthy's a certainty to start when he's fit. But people, I mean, we're kind of lumping McCarthy in with the same kind of 30-odd-year-old Scott Brown here, thinking that he's going to come here to sit in front of the defence.
Fitness levels, Mark, are good. McCarthy's fitness levels are way. Yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah, that's what people are basing it on, really, aren't they? Yeah.
It's not. I mean, we've spoke about that. Oh, that's his injury prone. That's all a lot of nonsense. But people are talking about him coming in and playing this defensive midfield role. But doesn't it mean McCarthy's just going to do what Scott Brown done and sit there in front of the defence? But I mean, we've seen McCarthy playing. He's up and down the park.
Mm-hmm.
He's very dynamic and mobile, McCarthy.
So for me, it'll be a case of him and McGregor.
Box to box.
Him and McGregor will be the two. And I've said it before, McGregor should be the main man. He should be controlling. Even last year, the season before, McGregor should have been the man that was controlling the tempo of our game. Scott Brown, it should be him that's setting up the attacks, getting the ball and making things happen. So
definitely.
Now with McCarthy in beside him, that can happen. With McCarthy just sitting back, but he'll still be able to move and support, and he'll still be able to get up and down the park and support. See, like the kind of job we expect for like Turnbull or Christie playing the box to box. Well, McCarthy's more than capable of doing that.
Yeah.
Here that McCarthy's going to be this anchor just sitting in front of the back four. That's not going to be the case, because it's obvious the way Ange doesn't play the game that way for a start.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that's what Barry and Michael said in the last podcast, like that. Ange knows that he doesn't need to be playing two defensive midfielders, Mark, in games. You know what I mean? That we saw that against Dundee. Like that team against Dundee the weekend was an attacking team, and it showed the benefits that we don't need two defensive midfielders in there for half the Scottish League games. You know.
But that's what I'm saying, Paul. Just because
Yeah.
see, you look at a formation, just because they're set up as two defensive midfielders, doesn't mean that that's the way they're actually going to play.
My only downer about last night is when Neil Lennon ran onto the pitch and tried to stop the game. And if you see that.
Yeah, I didn't see it. I just saw people talking about it, but I didn't actually catch it.
I actually missed it. Like I was on the live chat in the forum.
I think it showed you, did it?
I think some fans have got footage of it from their mobile phones, and they posted up on social media. Some fan ran onto the pitch. Paul, you're claiming it's Neil Lennon. Who am I to disagree with you?
Here.
The footage I saw, was too far away.
But Barry, why would you do that? Like, I mean, you're waiting a year and a half to get into Celtic Park. No, you're barred from Celtic Park, probably.
That's how you do that. Alcohol.
Yeah, do you know what I mean?
You know, honestly, I don't know. Was it a young kid or was it a young guy, or was it an older guy? I never seen it.
Probably got a bottle of Buckfast freaking after that.
No, obviously, it really is.
Stupid, like.
I've been steamboats, and that's what he's done it for. We've all done. Well,
he covered.
I did go in the apartment with 1 9 in a row, but I never done anything like stupid. Just like ran on myself or anything like that. It wasn't that bad.
I'll tell you, he covered more distance than what Edward did. I'll tell you that right now.
Exactly, yeah.
Sign him.
You know, looking ahead for, like, we know Hearts defeated us in the league opener, but it's a different team now to when I'm going to say it is a different team really from 2 weeks ago, because we seem more slicker, we seem more faster, more organised. Are you expecting Celtic, Barry, to go out and annihilate Hearts next Sunday?
I don't know about annihilate. You know, it's going to be a tough game. It is going to be a tough game. You know what you're going to get from Hearts. You know that they're a physical team. They'll get in about Celtic. But you know, I'm a lot more positive and a lot more excited now about this Celtic team. And it really is just the one change. Because the team that plays against Hearts on Sunday will be very similar to the one that played at Tynecastle, apart from the fact that Edward won't play. And with Edward not playing and Kyogo playing up front, that's going to bring other players into the game that maybe weren't as effective at Tynecastle. So I expect to see a similar performance that we had against Dundee and against Jablonec. I expect to see, and I do expect us to win. But you know what? It's just great to be excited about the Celtic game again. You know,
activity as well, Barry.
Absolutely.
Here moaning over the same old things night after night.
And you know what, exactly, and things like, you know, even having
folk to phone in now that things are going well.
Well, and you know what, even having the fact that Hearts in the goal, we're not having to worry about, you know, no matter how good we play, we're always liable to let a goal in. You know, that's given everybody confidence.
Yeah,
you know, so it's really. I can't wait. You know, I'm going. The game on Sunday, I'm looking forward to Alkmaar. You know, it'll be a really tough game the following Wednesday, and then, you know, the next league game against St Mirren. It's just all positive for me just now. I'm buzzing about what's happening, what Big Ange is doing, and credit to him. And you know what, as well, you need to give Ange credit for the discovery of Kyogo, because I don't think that's been talked about too much. You know, everybody's speaking about how well he's done, and rightly so. He's done really well since.
Anyone talking like,
it's like.
Sorry, man. Everyone thought that maybe he might go back and invade his old team, but he didn't. He actually went back to the Japanese. So Ange could have been looking at Kyogo for years, Barry. Do you know what I mean?
Well, he's clearly identified. You know, obviously he's come up against him on a number of occasions. He's clearly identified this is a guy that would totally suit my system. And you know what? Fair play to Celtic. They've backed him. I think he was about 4.6 million they've paid for him. But right away, we're reaping the benefits already. And credit to Ange for sort of going and identifying that this is a guy that's going to play his system.
And see, even though he is like a wee guy and that to look at, he's quite tough. Yeah, I mean, he doesn't get flung off the ball very often. He seems to be able to accept the kind of physical game. He seems to get in that. I mean,
he does, Mark. Yeah,
he chased the boy the full length of their half, and then he went away chasing the other boy. He ended up getting away a film, getting booked right enough. But it just shows the energy that he's got and just the will to like win and do what his job is today, harass players in the opposition.
Exactly, Mark. And you know what? There was a couple of times as well where I think it was Hearts went a bit more direct. Now, he's not a big guy, but it's easy just to sort of duck out a chance. He was going and he wasn't winning the headers, but he's putting the defenders off. He's giving them wee nudges, and they, kind of like the wee Scott McDonald. That's what he used to do. He was never going to win in the air, but he'd always try and put the defender off and pick up the second ball. Wee Kyogo was doing exactly the same last night. Exactly, yeah. Not just not just accepting, I'm not going to win this in the air. He was going and giving it a good go. And like I say, maybe he wasn't winning in the air, but he was doing enough to put the defender off, and we were picking up the second ball. So he's just one of these guys. He's never going to give the defenders. He's going to be a nightmare for every defender he comes up against.
Do you think he might make a few changes, Barry, because it's the League Cup against Hearts, or do you think that he actually wants to get the winning mentality now into the team, that he might stick with the same lineup again, three games in a row?
I'd be tempted to go with a similar lineup. I really would. Just because of momentum. These are guys that, the system's just starting to click. It's still not there in its fullness, but it's just starting to click. We're starting to see the benefits of what he's trying to introduce. So he might make one or two. He might very well make one or two. He might go a wee bit defensive. He might not play Rogic and Turnbull. I don't know if he wants to put McCarthy in there, because he did say, if McCarthy didn't make the European game, he'd be, in his thoughts for Sunday. So he might think about McCarthy, but I wouldn't make too many changes, if I'm honest. So that, against the more physical side, he might very well do that. Because I think, like I say, with against the Dundee, with all due respect, I think you can afford to put a Rogic and a Turnbull on the same part. But Hearts is maybe a wee bit different in terms of the opposition. It might be a wee bit tougher. We know they're going to be physical. They're going to get in about it. So to have that wee bit of steel in midfield, I'd be tempted to throw McCarthy in there and maybe sit Rogic out for this one. But it remains to be seen. But I certainly wouldn't make too many changes, because we don't want to disrupt what's happening right now. The way we're playing, I don't want to disrupt that.
One of the main problems last season, it was never the same start lineup for any game. There was always about 2-3 changes last season, but Anne's 2 games in a row, bar Abadell's injury that he came out, he picked up a slight injury. They were saying in training that's why he was rested, but it's nothing serious. Hopefully, Andrew, as you said, keep the momentum going and not make too many changes, Yeah,
well, that's what it's about, isn't it? It's about consistency. And like I say, we're the last 2 or 3 games, we're really starting to see this style and the system click for us. So, if you were to go and make sort of wholesale changes, bring in 5-6 players, that might set it back slightly, if these guys haven't been sort of playing the last few weeks. But for me, it's all about consistency, and I would be tempted to go with a similar team. But maybe you can still afford to make 1 or 2 changes if he decides to go with a bit more, but not a bit more defensive, but maybe a bit more steel and physicality in the centre of the park.
I think, Mark, one change we don't want to see is in goal.
No. It's Barry Fades. I think they spoke about it before as well. Was it maybe a time that we kind of look at playing young teams in the League Cup kind of idea, just forget about it. But no season, we're still building. So the more games this team plays as a unit,
the more fitness levels they go up and everything. Yeah, exactly.
Playing each other. So I don't think it'll be that many changes. Again, we said it the other night, young Montgomery in for Taylor, but we can't fault Taylor's performance. But maybe he needs a wee rest come Sunday. He's put
a lot of games now is when he has back,
and he puts in a shift every game. We can't fault him for that either. So again, maybe Montgomery in at left back, McCarthy will come into the midfield, but I think Abad will start as well. Maybe I think he'll be back, because it was only what he pulled up in training. It wasn't really an injury or anything like that. So I think Abad might start as well. But I just think that whoever we are going to play, we're starting 11 anyway. Obviously, Edward comes in and it changes the full team, but I think it's who we start with. They'll just carry on from where we left off the other night, because that's what I said the other day. This game against Jablonec, we're getting in there. I told the players just to take up where they finished off against Dundee, and they really did. If you spoke about Kyogo should have got a goal in the first couple of minutes there, and that would have been well, we were comfortable, but it would have been a totally different game if that had went in for Kyogo. Yeah, that's his thing. What Barry was saying there as well when he was mic'd up in the training. We don't stop. We go for
90 minutes.
we stop at half time, and then we start and we stop once once we're finished. It wins in the bag at 90 minutes, and then we just rinse repeat, whatever they call it now, the young ones, and that's I think what it is. How you finish that game the other night is how you start the next game. I mean, it's a kind. It's like a kind of raw aggression. That's really the kind of way the team's starting to play. It's where the way they're hunting players down all over the park. They're hunting them down in packs. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
Covering the channels in that Barry. They're running out of options. They're leaving the opposition like kind of stranded. They've not got an option to pass to.
definitely. And you know what? You actually, and to tie in with what you're saying there, Matt, he got asked in his pre-match press conference about Jablonec and how they were going to approach the game. The reporter said to him, "Do you think they're going to go hell for leather and try and get this tie back?" And he said, "I don't know what they're going to do." He says, "But I'll tell you, we're going to go hell for leather from the start." Now, it's quite a bold thing to say because how do you play this? You've got a 4-2 advantage. Do you approach it cautiously? He's very clear on what he's going to do. He's not interested in thinking, well, you know what? I think we need to discipline here, tighten. He's not interested in that. He is just going for it. And he called it before the game, and the team backed it up. Like you say, Mark, they're just hunting packs. They get that ball back, so quickly. And you know what? It's brilliant to watch. I know it's early doors and we shouldn't get too carried away, but I'm sorry, the last 3 games has just been brilliant to watch. Certainly the last 2.
You can see the basis of what he's building.
Yeah, absolutely.
I said it on the last podcast. See the game to Dundee. Right, we've seen the team kind of gradually getting better week by week, but see the jump for who was it we played before Dundee?
Jablonec, yeah, the first leg.
The jump for that Thursday night game to playing against Dundee, that's the biggest jump in improvement I've seen a Celtic team in a long, long time.
Yeah.
Difference even for Jablonec, although we won, we were still kind of ropey at times in that. But last week, again, you said it yourself, it was only Dundee, but I don't think there was a team in Scotland could have contained us last Sunday.
No. You know what, Matt? There's been a lot of that, isn't there? There's been, but it was only Dundee you were playing. Listen, we can only play the opposition that are put in front of us.
It's the way we played. It's the way we played, Barry.
Correct,
that's
Paul.
Exactly.
It wasn't about Dundee. It was about Celtic, and it was about the way that Celtic played. And like you say, Mark, what team would have lived with us the way we played on Sunday? I don't think there's one in Scotland that would have. And I include the other side of the city on that. They wouldn't have lived with us. We played like that.
It might not have been 6-0, but we'd have still won the game 2 or 3-0.
Still won definitely.
All that matters. And I was speaking to somebody earlier today, and I said, it's the football we're watching now. It's some of the best stuff we've seen for Tommy Burns. It really.
I sent a message to my mates and exactly the same thing. This and I know, you know what? It's easy to get carried away, but it's true. The actual football that we're playing, this is reminiscent of the Tommy Burns days.
But hopefully with a few more trophies involved in it.
More trophies, I know. But like he said to me, he says, but back then, he says, win, lose or draw. He says you come away from the game satisfied with what you just watched. And you know what? There's an element of truth to that. There was a consensus that we drew too many games on Tommy Burns, which is what cost us the league on a couple of occasions. But there's no doubt about it. The football that was played, it was an entertaining brand of football. And we're still at the very early stages at Anges. This is only going to get better. So if this is what it's like now, when he gets the personnel in that he wants, and these players get used to each other more and more with the weeks that pass, it's only going to get better.
I think, Barry, yourself and Mark there hit the nail on the head, and I can't see and approach any game to defend the lead.
No.
He'd go full blown out. No, he never will. I think that's the best thing. Why we see of Celtic this year, that he'd constantly attack, and we've been screaming for the last 2 years for an attacking Celtic team to have, not much has changed really, like in personnel, Barry. Do you know what I mean? Like a lot of these players that played last night were at Celtic. Do you know what I mean? For the last couple of years. Do you know what I mean? And years ago, it just shows what a different manager's mentality can do to a player.
That's it, and it's a different style of football. It's what he's introduced. He's introduced this brand of football because, like you say, Paul, a lot of the personnel still are there. A lot of the crux of the team, your McGregors, your Forrests, Christie, they were all there previously. And Rogic is there. Another one, but
they've all improved no end.
And I think Mikey might have actually mentioned it on Sunday's podcast. It wasn't just Lennon. The sort of last wee while at Brendan Rodgers' tenure.
Yes.
The brand of football was a wee bit of sort of side to side and slow sort of build up passing. That seems to be gone out the window, and he's not interested in that brand. He's interested in attacking brand of football. And like he said, a brand that his father would have been proud of, and that's really what he started to introduce, in my opinion.
Mark, can I ask you a question? We gave him a bit of stick because his performances the last few games, we've said that he was too slow by his team. But as you said, Taylor was brilliant last night. Where do you think that performance came from? Is it more time he actually is spending with Ange, or do you think Taylor knew that he had to up his game, or?
I wouldn't say it up his game really, Paul, because I don't think you can fault Taylor for his effort.
No.
Really, but I think it's just, again, Paul was just kind of maybe, I mean, we spoke about it last week. It was as if he didn't have a clue what he was meant to be doing in this system that Ange wants to play. But last night, for me, he was all over the park. I couldn't, apart from there was once and he went down to it. He didn't get away a foul or anything like that, but he kind of, means what Starfelt done against, was it Hearts? He went down too early for the ball and he gets stung. He done that. That was his only mistake last night. I think maybe just, again, it's just maybe clicked for Taylor. He's kind of got an idea. He's starting to understand it a bit better. I don't know, maybe that's the right thing, but maybe he's just starting to understand what his role is.
Maybe like every player, but would every player take a little more time than another player to get used to his system, and that's what Taylor needed. He needed that little bit more time to get used to Ange's system.
Well, it might be that. Well, I think every player it would be different. Do you know what I mean? You could go and buy Ronaldo and he would slot into your team, no bother. But Greg Taylor's a different kettle of fish. Maybe it takes a bit longer for him to get, because I mean he's changing his full Taylor
position.
He's changing but even he's changing his full. What he's been taught from he was a young boy as a left, he's changing his full outlook in the game and trying to get like what he does natural without having to think about things. Do you get what I mean? He's got to try and learn this kind of style of play, and he seems to have grasped it just the same way as Ralston has. For me, again, Paul, it's just at a certain level. People want to get into Europa League games with Ralston and Taylor. The system of Angie's, but at an SPL level, I don't see any problem with Taylor. And even this season again, Ralston, it's like a new player altogether.
I think one, and I'll get Barry's opinion on Ralston as well. One player who I've been so impressed with so far, it has to be Ralston, Barry. It has to be how he's just changed his whole career run really under the last couple of games, in this.
You know what? You've got to give the guy a huge amount of credit because, there's no doubt about it. He knows what the opinion of him is. He knew very well that, the Celtic fans maybe didn't think he was quite at the level he should. But he's not let that bother him at all. And you know what? Credit to the guy. He's really sort of taken his opportunity, hasn't he? He's really grasped it with both hands. He started the season very, very well. I need to be honest, guys, kind of similar to what you're saying there, Mark. I don't believe, no bad will on them at all, because when they pull on the Celtic jersey, they give their all. And there's no doubt about it that their performance levels have improved. But I just think they're at a certain level that if we're going to progress,
we need to progress. That's it, Barry. Yeah.
You know what, Paul? If we're going to play with inverted fullbacks, what you need them to be is very comfortable on the ball. And for me, Taylor and Ralston, they're not overly comfortable on the ball. They will get better. and they will get more comfortable the more they play that system. But for me, I'd be looking for, and going back to what Mark said with regards to Taylor, Taylor spent his sort of early Kilmarnock career being an out-and-out left-back, whereby he'd spend probably 70% of his games defending. Because Kilmarnock were, for the most part, before Steve Clarke came in, they were a lower half Premier League club. So they'd spend a lot of time defending. So he's gone to a club at Celtic who spend 90% of their time attacking. So he's had to adapt and adjust his game accordingly. For me, again, don't wish him, and I do agree, SPL level, all day long. But, if you're wanting to progress and, play in Europe and maybe even against your sort of Rangers and your Derby games, for me, we need a better level of player. And that's how I think you will see a left back and a right back brought in before the end of the window.
See, that's what I was kind of saying as well, Barry, like that. Like, I give the lads credit, like Taylor and thing, for their performances, and they give their all and the thing. But as you said there, like, if we want to get progress and see the full extent of what Ange can do to this team, we need to have the right players in those positions that he knows can play those positions the way he wants them as well, isn't it?
And that's what's happening. And Ange said himself, he spoke about transfers, I think either before or after the game. I think it might have been after the game last night. And he'd said, he got questioned about, what's happening with the trans. Is there anybody coming in? You said there would be a couple coming in. Ange said himself, he says, I'm quite particular and quite fussy about who I want to bring in. He says, I don't want to bring in a player just for the sake of filling a role. He said, it needs to be the right player for that role. And I was quite, I was good to hear that. They're not just going to go out and sign a right back because they need a right back. They need to sign the right back. And it's the same with the left back position. It sounds like Celtic and Ange at the minute, they're going for the players that they want and need rather than somebody just to fill a position for the sake of it.
And the way it should have been, Mark, really, like that the manager has the say on the players that's coming in. Like, we're gradually seeing the Peter Law effect on Celtic is gradually going away, isn't it?
Oh, certainly looks like it, and Ange himself spoke about like the input he's got in signings, which has got to be a good thing. I mean, as we move forward, we'll get all these backgrounds, fancy name director of footballs and that coming in, but I think the way Ange is still going to demand a say in transfers. Do you get? He's not going to sit back and just take a player for the sake. All right, we're signing this guy for so and so, without him having any kind of say or input on it, which has got to be a good thing.
Before we move on and we close the show, there's one discussion that it's been all over Celtic this week, Mark, is Gordon Strachan come back as a consultancy role for looking over the kind of youth development, the Codes League. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, I wasn't exactly doing cartwheels, but for 3 months as a consultancy, really, Paul, it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he's been doing for Dundee, and what Mikey was on, he could probably tell us a bit more about the kind of work he's done for Dundee, or Jonas, more of them that than us, but I mean, you've just come in to oversee. I mean, it's not even anything to do with the actual first team. So I don't see what the problem is. Dermot Desmond's probably paying for it his own pocket. Whether it works or not, for 3 months of consultancy, is it really that big a deal?
Mm-hmm. Barry, sorry?
Just got to say, people are going on about, that'll be him and that'll be his boy, well quoted, doing things like that. I mean, again, just people flapping their gums when they don't know what they're actually talking about.
Do you know what as well, Mark? It's taking pressure off Ange that he can concentrate slowly in the first team and not having to go down and fix up the thing as well, Mark. Because we were constantly saying, our youth academy needs fixes and Ange is the one to do it and stuff like that. But Ange can't do everything. And what Celtic need to do this year is win the title, and we need Ange concentrating on winning the title, isn't it?
Kind of put I don't know if this is kind of right term. He's kind of, some of the things he said in the press conference, he's kind of put a kind of noose on his neck, talking about how he likes to be involved in every stage and every department and things like that. But if Gordon came in, obviously he's going to Ange.
Exactly, Ange.
I mean, he'll have an input. I mean, there's the Colts team the other night, Paul. I didn't see anything again, but people were talking about it on the phone on Twitter.
They're playing with Ange want it, yeah.
Playing the same system as Ange wants and things like that, the inverted fullbacks and things. So if Gordon Strachan is coming in, I don't think he's not coming. I don't know how to. It's like it's like a kind of management level. He's not coming into this kind of
Suggesting things, Mark. Look, is this what I think? Yeah, I come in like maybe have a look at this area here, Dom, and you might need someone to fill this position here.
This is a guy that he's been Celtic manager. He's won leagues. He goes to Champions League, but don't forget he played under Alex Ferguson for years. Although they hated each other, right? He played under him for years. So he's learnt from watching Alex Ferguson working about how to bring youth players through. And I know it's different times, but the basic concept will still be the same, Barry. How you train and coach players.
Absolutely. And you know something, you know, kind of similar to you, Mark. I wasn't the one that was like jumping through hoops at the appointment of Gordon Strachan, but at the same time, I've seen some of the comments, and you know, he should be nowhere near our club, and what a backward step this. I just don't understand where people's mindset is that come out and say things like that. Listen, Gordon Strachan, like you've just said there, Mark, he's been manager at our football club. He's played under Sir Alex Ferguson. He's played at, you know, Leeds, Manchester United. He's got a great concept and a great wealth of knowledge of the game. And like you say, Paul, he's coming in and he's going to have a wee look at where we're at, and he's going to make some suggestions. He's not going to have anything to do with the football team. You know, he's not going to have anything to do with tactics and, you know, transfers, anything like that. He's just going, and you know what? You will absolutely have conversations with Ange, because Ange is not involved in this, like you guys just said. But, you know, to see right here and see some of the negative comments about Gordon Strachan, who else are you going to have? You know, this is a guy.
Yeah, because that's what I was thinking, Barry.
40, 50 years senior experience, you know?
Yeah.
I've spoke about it before on here, right through Ed 2. I know a lot of the stuff that goes on behind the scenes with Chelsea. You've seen me talk about it on the forum over the years and that. I mean, Roman Abramovich has got these guys
all around him, Mac. Yeah, they do. Yeah.
I can't mind his name. The Dutch guy, Paul.
Oh, I know the fella you're on about. Yes.
This guy's like 70-odd-year-old, and this guy can go anywhere in the world and offer terms to sign up any player on the strength of Roman Abramovich. Chelsea's got all these advisors round about him, probably guys that we've not even really heard of. As I said, I only know this through Ed 2. When Villas-Boas was our manager, he brought these independent people in. He brought them in to look at the club, what was going wrong, and it was decided that AVB's training methods were a bit not as modern as Chelsea realised. That's one of the main reasons that Villas-Boas left Chelsea. His training methods weren't up to the kind of standards that Abramovich's advisors said that it should be. And to me, that's what Dermot Desmond's done. He's bringing in a guy that he trusts. We know he trusts Strachan. We know it. He's on Celtic TV. He's lawyer. He doesn't work for Celtic. He does for Dundee already. Let's face it. So Dermot Desmond's brought in a guy that's worked for him. He knows what he's looking for, and he trusts it. He's brought him in here to advise him. Well, not advise him personally, but advise the club on what they're doing wrong in the youth academy and these pathways in that, Paul. How to bring young.
But that's what I was looking at, Mark. I was like, I was thinking about Gordon Strachan, and I was thinking like you have to look at the positive here, right? He was Celtic manager, so he during his time as well, he could have saw these flaws in the youth system. He was your national coach. He's been around the Scottish game for the best part of his career, Mark. Like
played at the top level.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. England, we
you know, like
and Leeds. I mean, he won the league.
Would it like someone to come in who knew nothing about our youth academy? Like it's a benefit to Celtic knowing that they can rely on someone like Gordon Strachan that's going to come in and help the club, Mark, this way as well, like, isn't it?
If he was Dutch, if he was a Dutch Gordon Strachan that had won leagues with Ajax and won Ajax into the Champions League and things like that, nobody would bat an eyelid. Just because it's Gordon Strachan. But I get it, folks, 3 months.
I think it's all to do because, Mark, when that fan media thing, and as well, when they were asked about was he coming in as director of football, and I think people are kind of saying that Dominic, because he's gone back and he's worried that he said Gordon Strachan wasn't, but Dominic Mike said Gordon Strachan wasn't coming in as director of football. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, somebody asked him the question and he told the truth.
Yeah,
He's director of football.
exactly.
Even when the story first broke, it was he was coming in. But it was he was coming in as a technical director. He was coming in as a sporting director, and then all it was he was coming in as a consultant for the academy and the B team and the women's team. That really the women's.
And why is it being investigated, then, Mark? Like, why does Scottish FA investigate? Like, what's the issue there? Like, he scored 2 goals with 2 clubs or something?
Something like that, because he's working for 2 clubs. There's a conflict of interest. Well, is that not the same as loaning players and things like that? Really, is that not a conflict of interest?
Barry, what's your thought? And like, maybe would you know anything like why the FA would be investigating it, or?
I don't know. You know something, it doesn't surprise me though. It doesn't.
Yeah.
When it comes to these sort of things, but just exactly what you guys have just said, they're claiming that there's a potential conflict of interest. With all due respect to Dundee, I don't think you can compare the 2 clubs. To be honest, I don't think, with all due respect, I don't think Gordon Strachan will be taking anything from the Dundee structure and saying it should be implemented into Celtic structure. However, kind of just what you guys were saying there, he's coming in for a 3-month period. He's going to have a look at things like, the youth development, the B team, the women's team, and he's going to make suggestions. There's nothing to say that Celtic are going to go ahead or agree with these suggestions. They're just, like you say, Mark, this is a guy that Dermot Desmond trusts. He's been about the game for, in the British game for, decades. And he's been relatively successful everywhere he's gone. And so they're just saying, look, come and have a wee look. Come and have a look at our infrastructure. Come and have a look at the club. See if you think you can, come up with a suggestion that'll improve this, or see what you think about this, or how can we make this better? And he'll come up with, I'd imagine a list of things. Well, this is what I think you should do. But there's nothing to say that Celtic would say, well, yeah, you know what, we're going to do everything you say. They might turn around and say, well, you know what, thanks for your input. However, we're actually going to go in a different direction. It's just, for me, it's much ado about nothing, to be perfectly honest with you.
With that, right, obviously when Gordon Strachan was the national team manager, he probably did interviews and mentioned things about youths, and do you get what I mean? All the stuff about what was wrong with our game. So what would have happened if the SFA said to me now, want to come in and restructure our youth setup? Would that be a conflict of interest?
That's the exact same scenario.
Basically, that is what's right. Gordon Strachan's been, we've spoke right there, all his experience as a player. He's Celtic manager, our manager, Scotland manager. So he knows what even problems could arise at the kind of national level. So maybe Celtic's looked at him, or Dermot Desmond's even said, look, Gordon, mind all that stuff you were saying in Scotland. Why not come do that for us? Help us set that up, I mean, it could be something as simple as that. It's not even, I mean, as you say, he's looking in here and telling Andrew, I think you should play Kyogo out on the left. Do you know, it's nothing to do with that. It's just, it's like getting advice on PR. It really, to me, that's what it is. Just getting somebody that you trust, that knows what they're talking about, to get in and tell you what's immediately wrong with what you're doing.
I know, and see, with regards to the investigation, if it is true, I think that's potentially just somebody thinking, well, wait a minute, how can you have a technical director at another SPL club going and working as a consultant for? I think that's people just putting 2 and 2 together and thinking, nah, that doesn't sound right. This needs investigated. That's what I think. I genuinely think that's what that is, because it doesn't quite sound right. That how can you have somebody from another club coming in and being a consultant? I think that's what that is. I really do.
It's just nitpicking. Really,
just nonsense.
Trying to cause problems and look for problems where there really shouldn't be.
Problems.
It's just filling a headline on the back page of a national newspaper. That's what that is.
Clickbait.
Just before we go, after the game, Ange came out onto the pitch and he applauded the fans and he got a big roar. Like, he's really, Barry, uniting the whole, from last season, like the protest outside with the first team. Like, he's really brought the fans and the first team back together, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has. And you know what? The Celtic supporters, and credit to them, they've made it abundantly clear that from the start is you're going to get our support. We are behind you 100%, because remember at the start they were the press were picking up on, well, how do you feel that you weren't first choice? And like at the fans media conference right at the very start when he got sort of introduced, they said, look, don't listen to any of that. You know, we are 100% behind you. It doesn't matter what sort of choice you were. You're our manager now, and we'll back you. And the fans are living up to that. They are back, and we will. And you know something, like we've said before, and you mentioned the other day, Mark, you know, about, you know, the fans who maybe haven't sampled any sort of, you know, defeat or, you know, losing the league in their lifetime. You know, these young 9-year-olds that you spoke about that now are now 19. This is their first sample. I think sometimes when, you know, you do sample this, it makes you sort of appreciate what you had before, and, you know, really get behind the team to get back to those days. And we've had a setback. Last season was a setback, a big setback, unfortunately. But now it makes us all the more determined as supporters and as a club to unite and really get back to where we want to be. And I think Ange is getting the benefit of that. And that'll only stand him in good stead, because if the supporters are behind him and he understands that, that allows him to go and implement what he wants into the squad. And we're all united in this, and we'll get back to where we need to be.
Anybody miss Eddie Howe?
Or Eddie Who, Eddie Who's JFP likes to call him.
I know JFP and that, but I mean, really, none of us were really that keen on him.
I think, Mark, what we said, Mark, that we accepted it because he was the only name really that was there, wasn't it?
Well, obviously, we know the board were trying to get him in, and we were all trying to look at good points of what he'd done and things like that. But I said at the time, it never really excited me. He never really. I'd have accepted it, and you know what I mean? Brilliant, Eddie Howe's our manager, but as soon as Ange was linked with the job and started looking into him and that, you kind of got the impression this is a kind of a Celtic type of guy. Do you know what I mean? Somebody that really buys into this kind of football and buys into the club stuff. I mean, Eddie Howe wouldn't have came here and spoke to Ange. There's no way in the world would have kind of interviews and
No,
the openness of him.
That's what I was about to say. See, every time Ange goes in front of the press, you feel confident, you believe what he's saying. You know, as a fan, any time I listen to an Ange press conference, post-match or pre-match, I come away thinking, you know what, I believe in this guy. I totally am on board with what he's saying and what he's trying to implement into the club. And like you say, I'm not bashing Eddie Howe, but he didn't strike me as that type of character that would be able to embrace the big.
Wouldn't he be playing that kind of football?
I don't think we would have been where we are now.
No, I don't
so. You know, I don't think we'd be as organised that we are with Ange in so little time. I think it would have taken Eddie Howe a lot more time to get Celtic organised.
Money.
Yeah.
More money, because he would have been looking at spend. I mean, well, we spoke about who's making these signings. Eddie Howe apparently wasn't happy with who Celtic offered him as signings. What manager is happy with any signings you've made?
Exactly.
Signing we've made this summer, Paul. You can't. Every player stepped up to the mark right away, really.
And that's what we were looking for, Barry. Like players who are able to come straight into your. Like we've been crying for these type players for years, Barry. That come in and make a straight impact. They're coming in making our first team better. They're not. They're better than what we have, and they're advancing the team. That's what we were looking for, and that's what we're getting.
Yeah, and you know what? Credit to them, Paul, because you know what? Like I say, see the guys, the signings that have come in. Every single one of them has hit the ground running. Now, you know, like you've got guys like Kyogo, and you know, coming from a different part of the world. Young Abada coming in there. It's easy for them. It's easy for us or Ange. You know, in the management team to turn and say, well, you know what, we need to bed these guys in. You know, they're coming to a new culture, they're coming to a different country. Some of them don't speak the language. We need.
Part of we've learned under like Lennon and.
It took them nearly a whole season to breed in. We did see players maybe. Exactly.
Rodgers and Lennon always spoke about players needing time to settle. But Big Ange just blew that out of the water this week.
Oh, definitely. And look at, like, you know, throwing in Abada. Look at him. He's a 19-year-old boy. They threw him in there, and he's set the world on fire. You know,
your debut, like at 19 years of age.
He's a constant threat. He's a throwback winger, a guy that just loves to run in behind and, you know, run at full back. Kyogo's come in there, and he's really, you know, I don't know, was he 3 or 4 goals he's got already to his name? and Starfeld as well. And, like I say, you've got Hart coming in there making an impact. McCarthy still to come. Like you say, Paul, these guys have come in and completely hit. There's been no bedding in period. They've come in. They're not even on the bench. They're starting games and they're really, enhancing our team.
I mean, that's what you're expecting for your level of your Harts and McCarthy's, and even Logo to a certain extent, apart from the moving countries, but as his age and experience of playing, you're expecting they kind of players to hit the ground running. But as you said, the guys look a bad in that. They're just here, boom, third go. He's done, as you say, he's set the world on fire the last few games that he's played.
But do you think James Forrest might find his game time limited this season with Abada?
I do think he will. Yeah, I mean, listen, you know what? I think I'm not wanting to put any kind of negative on last night's one, but if I was to say, I thought James Forrest was a wee bit quiet last night.
Mm-hmm.
He got his goal, and that's what he does. He takes up great positions, and he always makes an impact in some part of the game. But I thought out of everybody on the field, he was a wee bit quieter last night. And I think I said it on the last podcast I was on, I think Ange likes his wide players to be really direct. And he said it himself, he likes them to get to that byline, put a cross in. Whereas we spoke about Forrest likes to come in and link up with the players where, so I think, especially if you're looking at, it's hypothetical at the minute, but if you're looking at your wide players being Kyogo and Abada or Lovric, say, their style of play is very much direct. James Forrest isn't really like that. I think but like you say, it's good for competition. And Forrest was at his best when Paddy Roberts was on fire. So I don't know if he'll start as many games as what he might want to, but he'll certainly have a part to play. There's no doubt about it. But I think when it comes to starting, he might not start as many games as what he hopes to do.
What I did notice with him last night was that he was kind of mixing it up. He was trying to go outside and take a man, go to the byline, or he was... Usually it's always he goes inside.
Cut in, yeah, exactly.
He was trying to mix it up. Sometimes he try to get by and hit the byline, get crosses and so it's up to James Forrest to step up to the plate again.
Yeah. And that's, you know what? Again, Mark, it's great for competition because, Forrest might have been another one who it was, he didn't really have much competition. If I play well, if I don't, I'm still going to play. Same with Edward. Edward was very well aware. If I don't play well today, it doesn't matter. I'm going to be playing next week. It doesn't matter. Whereas now we've got the competition. If you're not stepping up to the plate, you're not going to play in this team. I'm just not going to play you in this team unless you're at the top of your game. But that's only going to benefit our club. Simple as that.
Plus, talking about them switching wings. I mean, Ange might be sitting watching a game and thinking Forrest, right, he's maybe sitting on the bench, go in the left-hand side. This, do you know what I mean? And he'll go out there and run amok. And that's giving Ange again an option and forcing it. It's got to see the better they're all playing, the better it's going to be for these fringe players. It's good that there's going to be so many can interchange across that kind of front three or four. Yeah. It's going to keep say Forrest on his toes the way you're saying when Roberts was here and that, Barry. If you're not playing well, you'll not be starting. I think that is I do think Ange will go that kind of way forward.
Yeah, I think we've seen it already, Mark, with Kyogo, and Edward. I think he saw Edward as a weakness, Barry.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Edward, Paul. I was actually just going away to say that. I never for 1 minute thought I'd be sitting here thinking, you know what, I don't think we're going to miss Edward. For the service and what he's done for the club, brilliant. But I never thought I'd be standing here thinking, Mark, you asked me a question last Sunday when I was on, last Thursday after the first leg of the game. You asked me a question. Did I think, I'm going slightly off the tangent, did I think somebody like Kevin Nisbet could come in and replace Edward? And I said, no, I don't think he would. See, now, I've completely changed my mind on that. Just for the for the simple reason, Mark, that I don't think an Odsonne-Edwards style player fits in Ange's description any way, shape or form. Whereas see a Kevin Nisbet, I know he sort of divides opinion. I think, I don't know.
But he's fast, Barry. He's fast.
Yeah, well...
He'd be a good backup striker. He plays once, he'll harry, defend.
Exactly, he runs. That's exactly what I was about to say. And I can't remember who it was. It might have been Welshie on the other one, was talking about, would Nisbet come in to sit on the bench? I don't buy into that at all. I don't think there is a first choice.
That was me that said that.
I couldn't, I don't buy into that. I don't believe it. Well, even Kyogo, he's going to be our first choice. That shouldn't be the case. It should be, see if, like, I'm going off on a tangent here, but see if Kevin Nisbet was to come to the football club, or any other striker for that matter, it should be a case of, listen, you're going to get an opportunity. It's up to you to take that opportunity. Like we did with John Hartson. We had Sutton and, back in the O'Neill days, we had Sutton and Larson, one of our most successful strike partnerships in 30 years. But Martin O'Neill still went out and bought John Hartson a £6 million strike the season after. And he had to bide his time. But once he was in there, he was very rarely out the team, And that's what I would like to think, that whoever comes in, I just think now, Edward-style striker, he'll not fit in Ange's plans whatsoever.
But even what you're saying there, Barry, I've said that for we play enough games for these fringe players to get played game time. I mean,
definitely.
No need for Cal McGregor to be playing 50 odd games a season and things like that.
But no.
Younger players that can come in. Again, no offence to these wee did.
When's the last time you saw Cal McGregor being substitute, Mark, given a rest at a game like yesterday?
Substituted last night.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like you could see Ange with best players. Do you know what I mean?
I've said that for how long have I said that, Paul?
Yeah, exactly.
This is the game. We play enough games that we can keep players happy with the game time. See young players that are demanding game time. We play enough games across the league, Scottish Cup, the League Cup, and then hopefully Europe, that we've got plenty of games to give all these young players game time. We've said it before there, for 3 or 4 nothing up against Dundee or Kilmarnock, bring on a couple of young players. After they start with 1 or 2 of them, just realise this is the level they can play and learn it, like young Montgomery. Do you know what I mean? Say like him starting last week against Dundee, he's good enough to play against Dundee. Into a Champions League game or a Europa League game or a Derby game or Aberdeen or that against them, but these young guys, get a couple of them in your starting squad against the smaller teams, and then once the game's 3-2, 3-0 down, the game's dead, bring on another couple and let them. Barry, you've been there, mate. Know what I mean? You know more about this than me, how to bring on a young player.
Yeah, definitely. And something as well, Mark, it gives these young boys confidence that what, the manager trusts me to go in here and do a job, and that's another part of their development. If they've got a belief that the manager believes in them, that's only going to enhance them. But you're absolutely, and to see Adam Montgomery coming on in the last couple of games, it could have been easy to stick on somebody else like an Ayete. I know he came on last night, but I'm talking about the Dundee games and stuff and the European ones. To actually for Ange to go out and give these boys a wee bit of game time, that just shows you, hopefully going forward, what we're going to see. And he's going to introduce these young players.
Yeah, it should have been the way, Barry. It should have been. It should have been the way.
I don't just put Ayete on for the sake of getting Ayete game time. Put on somebody that just keep the game going the way it is and learn from out there playing. Ayete was really last night. I don't know why he was brought on either.
It was the same with Beaton, Matt. He bought Beaton and
I know about you, but I shitted myself when I saw Beaton come on. I really did.
But you know what? Kind of going to your point, though, Mark. For me, I would have loved to have seen a Scott Robertson come on instead of Beaton, or a
Hugo Connolly.
A Luca Con, somebody like that, and I know they weren't on in the squad or on the bench to play last night, but it's kind of the point you're making, that why bring on Near Beaton into the centre of the park when the game's done and dusted? There was an ideal opportunity for me to introduce or blood one of these youngsters and give them a wee taste in front of a crowd. There's kind of no pressure on them in the sense that the tie was dead. The game was gone. Let them go and express themselves, but that might still come yet. You never know.
Mark, have you anything to add on before we go? Anything about Jeanette Findlay or?
No, I'm fine.
Barry?
No, let Barry finish about football and that, Paul, and then I'll talk about what I want to talk about.
Yeah, Barry?
Yeah, you know what? It's just refreshing and brilliant to be coming on excited on a podcast, speaking about positive Celtic results, positive performances. The future's looking bright. It's great because I've never heard. I think this is the first time I've come on and been positive.
Some difference, but in it, Barry, just to.
But it just gives a buzz along the whole.
Totally, Paul. You know what? On a serious note, I know I've kind of been buzzing tonight, but honestly, it's great just to be looked at. I can't wait for the game on Sunday. I can't wait.
And I said that to you, Mark.
You know what I mean? I'm buzzing for
the last time you were actually looking forward to a Celtic game to come on the telly?
Did we the other night, me and Paul? Well, when was the last time you were sitting there excited to watch a Celtic game?
Yeah. Definitely. That's the vibe that's going around just now.
Yeah, Mark, back to you.
Just before we close, just talking about subscriptions and likes. Thanks very much to everybody that subscribes and likes. And we've just learned for Miles has helped us out with this YouTube stuff and that if you like, subscribe, and if you can you leave a comment below the video as well, because that seems to help us grow over YouTube and things like that. But just thanks very much for joining us again, lads. I hope you enjoyed it. And apologies about the sound problems when Jeanette Findlay was on. We'll hopefully sort that out and even get Jeanette back on again in future.
Perfect. Head.
Hail, hail. Good night, lads.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers,
Night.
Barry. Good night.
Cheers, guys. Bye.
That was good, that Mark, wasn't it?
Aye, that was aye.
Yeah.